Chapter 831. The Black Wolf Yabgu did not have to wait for too long. Several days later, a massive eagle flew from the capital over the mountains and rivers, landing in the Black Wolf Yabgu's tent. Upon opening the letter, he saw only a few short lines. The information is conclusive. Wang Chang's second brother, Wang Bei, was released from the imperial prison a few days ago. His berserk madness had broken out, and he began to kill people on the street. This matter has caused quite a stir, and the Court of Judicial Review has already intervened. In addition, this matter truly did involve a princess of the imperial household. There were also a few other related bits of information. Ha, good. The Black Wolf Yabgu's brows relaxed at this news. The depression in his heart instantly swept away. His entire person felt refreshed, and he finally couldn't help but laugh, his laughter echoing over the steppe. The heavens truly are helping me. Since I have this chance, there's no need to wait for anything else. Pass on my order. Have the army gather. Tonight, we will completely destroy the Tang Dynasty's Qixi armory. The Tang Dynasty's massive armory was like a fishbone wedged against the Western Turkic Khaganate's throat. The Black Wolf Yabgu had wanted to destroy this armory for more than a day or two. It had been a year or two, and now the time had come. It was finally time to make it a reality. Yes, your subordinate will go. The guard quickly left. Boom! The Black Wolf Yabgu's order caused the horses of the steppe to whinnied, and whinnied as countless Turkic warriors received the summons and gathered from all over the steppe. At the same time, the howls of the green wolves began to summon their large and muscular counterparts. For a moment, the steppe was in a somber mood, the atmosphere of a battle. Deep into the night, after the Z period, the area where Qixi and the steppe intersected, where soldiers had once stood, was now empty. Ha, after taking someone's money, they'll help them avert disaster. These fellows truly are trustworthy. In the distance, a coarse laughter in Turkic came from the darkness as a horseman scouted the area and quickly galloped away. In the blink of an eye, the earth rumbled as hundreds and thousands of cavalry swarmed over. At the very front of the group, a tall and muscular figure was riding a majestic divine steed that was taller than a man. His robe and long hair fluttered in the wind. He was filled with a sense of wildness and looked extremely eye-catching. All of you keep up. Let's get this over with. If anyone falls behind and makes a mistake, they will be punished according to military law when we get back. The gloomy voice of the Black Wolf Yabgu floated far into the night. Ha, don't worry. Sir won't do anything bad. This time, we'll go to Qixi and burn it to the ground. Ha, how is arson enough? We still have to kill 2 people. Whoever dares to stop us this time will die. If you can't even do this well, all of you should hurry up and take your babies to drink milk. That the darkness was instantly filled with laughter, and the wind howled as the group of people flew through the gap, heading toward the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. Behind them, tall and muscular black wolves, their eyes flashing with a dark green light, silently followed them through the darkness. After passing through the Turkic steppe, they kept their distance from Wuxia's city of steel, and then continued northwest. After the Z period, the howling of the wind in Qixi drowned out the sound of the horses' hooves. The 5,000-strong Turkic army was like ghosts in the night, silently advancing in a straight line toward the Qixi armory. They did not encounter any sentries or defenses along the way. This was completely different from the strict security that had prevailed under Fomenlinta's rule, with a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10. The Black Wolf Yabgu carefully examined his surroundings and gave a satisfied nod. The wealth he had obtained from that great trader Hulaeg had been put to good use. After taking his money, the Hu commanders of Qixi had indeed removed all the sentries. As long as they could burn down that Qixi armory, everything would be worth it. Rumble! Amidst the howling of the wind, the 5,000 men charged forward. About an hour later, they arrived at an enormous building. It was towering and lofty, like a prehistoric beast. It covered an area of several dozen li, and was extremely eye-catching in the dark night. Even from far away, Zhang Xian could feel a powerful aura and pressure coming from afar. In front of this massive building, all palaces and buildings seemed as insignificant as ants, all of them losing their splendor. The Chishi Armory. The Black Wolf Yabgu was instantly invigorated by that massive silhouette in the darkness. This massive armory was stocked with hundreds of thousands of ballistae, armors, sabers, swords, and halberds. 10 some years ago, the Black Wolf Yabgu had disguised himself as a Hu merchant from the western regions and sneaked into this place to take a look. With just a single look, he felt that it was a magnificent sight, and he was greatly shaken. The entire building had been designed and constructed by the architects of the Tang Dynasty Imperial Palace, and the outer walls were all made of sturdy metal. From the very start, the possibility of arson had been taken into account. But it's still useless. There's nothing that can't be burned. As the Black Wolf Yabgu galloped forward, he shot a glance at the leather bags and cylinders at the sides of his horses, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. These were not filled with water, but Arabian black oil. Each of the 5,000 soldiers was equipped with several of these leather bags and cylinders. As long as the Arabian black oil was poured into them, even steel would be set ablaze. More importantly, the Black Wolf Yabgu had already ordered one of the Hu commanders to stuff the armory with hay. "Everyone follow me." The Black Wolf Yabgu suddenly let out a loud roar and charged forward. The 5,000 Turkic soldiers kicked up a cloud of dust as they rode the wind toward the Chishi armory. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, they were getting closer and closer, and soon, the Chishi armory was only 10 some zhang away. In the distance, the guards at the gate of the Chishi armory seemed to have noticed something and began to shout. "Haha, it's too late to notice now." The Black Wolf Yabgu looked into the distance, a savage and cruel smile in his eyes. His previous strategy was already showing its effects. Although there were still some guards around the Chishi armory, they were less than a tenth of their original number. These people were simply no match for the Turkic elites he had carefully selected. "It's about time. Kill them all. Destroy the Chishi armory." The Black Wolf Yabgu unsheathed his scimitar and swung it forward. In an instant, the 5,000 Turkic warriors roared and charged forward. "Kill them all." "Ha ha ha. That yelling guard at the gate is mine. No one is allowed to fight with me. Destroy these Tang people. It's finally time for us Turks to counterattack." The 5,000 soldiers pulled out their weapons and charged toward the gate of the Chishi armory with lightning-fast speed. Chishi was like a group of dragons without a leader, each fighting with its own faction. There was no one who could threaten them. Tonight was fated to be a night of blood for the Chishi Protectorate. Clang clang clang. In the process of charging, one more ring after another burst out of their bodies and fell under their feet, producing a series of metallic clangs. 5,000 soldiers were 5,000 war halos. Their energies fused together into a massive wave that swept toward the Chishi armory with mountain-toppling momentum. In the face of this vast ocean of energy, the guards of the Chishi armory were like fireflies before the bright moon, all of them dim and colorless, thrown into disarray. The Black Wolf Yabgu was overseeing the western border, and it had fought countless battles with the Chishi Protectorate. This night's operation was a surprise attack, and the 5,000 soldiers were all elites who had followed him for many years, all of them extremely experienced. Even if they couldn't compare to Dian Mangpo's White Braves, they weren't too far behind. They were more than enough to deal with the guards of the Chishi armory. Rumble. The earth quaked as the 5,000 Turkic soldiers appeared out of nowhere like ghosts, causing the guards of the Chishi armory to fall into disarray. Just when these people were about to be crushed to pieces by the 5,000 Turkic soldiers, bang! Without any warning, the several dozen Turkic cavalry at the very front suddenly sank down, men and horses plummeting to the ground. The earth around them suddenly caved in, revealing a massive pit. This pit was filled with sharp steel awls. As these war horses fell, they were pierced through by these awls. The other Turkic cavalry were thrown off their horses and landed in the pit, also heavily injured. Nay, the war horses neighed, and a series of miserable cries rang out incessantly. The Turkic army, which had been charging forward in high morale, was instantly thrown into chaos. What's going on? The Black Wolf Yabgu paled in shock at this sight. Almost all the guards around the Chishi armory had been mobilized, leaving less than 10% of them. They posed no threat at all. Moreover, He had bribed more than half of the Hu generals in the Qixi Protectorate. No matter what, there shouldn't have been such a large horse trap here. Careful, the black wolf Yabgu yelled, his eyelids twitching as an intense sense of unease welled up in his heart. This was definitely not something they had agreed on beforehand. The black wolf Yabgu had a feeling that something unexpected had happened. But before the black wolf Yabgu could order his army to retreat and go around the trap, a shrill whistle cut through the air and resounded in everyone's ears. Thwish thwish thwish. Fire arrows suddenly appeared in the darkness, drawing fiery red arcs in the night sky as they abruptly landed around the group. Huh! Flames roiled, and where each fire arrow landed, a massive bonfire would ignite. These bonfires were scattered all over the place, engulfing the 5,000 Turkic soldiers. The night sky was instantly illuminated. Not good, we've been ambushed. Chapter 832. It was clear that all of this had been prepared in advance, just waiting for them to fall into the ambush. But this was not the end. Rumble! A massive sound came from above, accompanied by the howling of the wind. The black wolf Yabgu raised his head and saw a black silhouette approaching, rapidly growing larger and larger. Finally, with a massive boom, it crashed into the ground in front of him. Only when the black wolf Yabgu focused his eyes did he realize that it was a massive wooden stake. There seemed to be some words written on the stake, not in the Chinese characters commonly used in Qixi, but in Turkic script. Year 38 of the Holy Emperor, 17th of the 11th month, the Western Turkic Khaganate's black wolf Great Yabgu Agudalan has been buried here. Bastard! Agudalan was enraged by these words. Just who is it? Come out! Agudalan's roar resounded through the night sky. As a famous general of the western regions, Agudalan's reputation was no less than Dian Mangpoch's. Both were top-class existences in the region. No matter who was hiding in the shadows to deal with him, they would have to pay a price. There was currently no one in Qixi that was a match for him. Even if someone had laid an ambush here, it would only prove that they were seeking death. Ha ha ha, Agudalan, I've been waiting for you here for a long time. It seemed like only a split second had passed, but it also seemed like countless long centuries. Suddenly, a burst of laughter rang out in the night. The voice sounded very young, and it was filled with a sense of calculation. Nay, a warhorse neighed as a 16 or 17-year-old youth galloped over, its hooves as white as snow. This youth had an outstanding temperament, and was galloping in this direction. Kail! Kail! A battle cry shook the heavens and the earth. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of cavalrymen charged over like a hurricane. This momentum was even more terrifying than the charge of the 5,000 Turkic soldiers. Wang Chong! Agudalan did not pay attention to the cavalrymen, charging towards him like a tidal wave in the dark. The moment the 16 or 17-year-old boy appeared, he attracted all of his attention. This is impossible. Agudalan felt a great impact and shock in his heart. Although he had never seen this youth before, he had already accumulated a mountain of drawings and information about him. Agudalan was extremely familiar with him. He had many titles. The young Marquis of the Tang dynasty, the son of Heaven's disciple, the 8th great general of the Central Plains. But none of these titles could compare to one name. Wang Chong. Didn't he go to the capital? Didn't something happen to his second brother? And he even killed a princess. Why is he here? Agudalan couldn't believe his eyes. It was too sudden. Even if the entire army of the Qixi Protectorate appeared here, he would not be as shocked as he was right now. He had investigated this matter, and both the capital and Wuxiang had confirmed it before taking action. If Wang Chong were still in Wuxiang, he would never have acted so rashly. He would have been much more cautious. Does he not even care about his second brother? Countless thoughts flew through his mind, but Agudalan quickly regained his composure. Everyone, hear my order. Split into 800 men, and break down the gate of the Qixi armory. Pour black oil over it and light it on fire. Everyone else, follow me. Wang Chong, since you've come to find me, I'll fulfill your wish. All soldiers, hear my order. Anyone who kills the young Marquis of the Tang dynasty will be rewarded with 1 million taels of gold. Kill! In a flash of cold light, Agudalan gripped his saber and squeezed his horse's abdomen. Man and horse became one, and he charged forward, leaving behind countless afterimages as he charged at Wang Chong. Behind him, the 5,000 Turkic warriors split into two. 800 went around the pit and toward the Qixi armory, while the other 4,000 followed closely behind a good Elan. The 5,000 Turkic warriors had managed to quickly regain their composure, showing no sign of panic. But Wang Chong only smirked at this sight. No matter how experienced and well-trained a good Elan's soldiers were, they were nothing more than parlor tricks in Wang Chong's eyes, a display of slight skill before an expert. A good Elan's 5,000 soldiers couldn't even keep up with Dian Mengpo's white braves, much less his own Wuxian cavalry. Li Sai, Huang Bati and Elder Fong, Elder Do follow me. The rest of you, deal with the Turkic cavalry. Not a single one is to escape today. Under the night sky, Wang Chong's eyes were as bright as swords. His body was pressed against the back of his horse as he stared at a good Elan, his entire body exuding an intense will to fight. Today the two major threats to Qixi would finally be resolved. With Dian Mengpoj dead, only a good Elan was left. Once he was killed, Qixi would have nothing to worry about. Rumble. The galloping of the warhorse was like a peal of thunder. Every time its hooves stomped on the ground, it seemed like the earth itself was about to shatter. Wang Chong and a good Elan charged at each other, both of them moving as fast as lightning. Even more shocking was that neither Wang Chong nor a good Elan was holding back. The power of this attack was beyond anyone's imagination. Vast heaven-earth art. Great yin-yang art. Wang Chong pressed against the back of his horse, countless halos descending from his body and fusing with his warhorse. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's body flashed with light. After activating the karmic battle armor, Wang Chong immediately used the vast heaven-earth art and great yin-yang art, the two strongest techniques of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Bzzz. In an instant, the world transformed into an invisible dividing line. The sky was bright while the ground was pitch black, the two clearly demarcated. And at the two ends of this dividing line, one gold and one red, one yin and one yang, the images of the sun and moon appeared in the air, making Wang Chong's figure seem imposing and lofty, like a god exiled from the heavens. Rumble. Wang Chong and his horse soared into the air, and in a fierce gale, he charged at a good Elan like a meteor crashing into the earth. War god raises the heavens, Mount Sanmi. A good Elan's roar resounded through the air. In a flash, light and shadow crisscrossed, and a frightening energy erupted from his body. Ah! A low, hoarse roar came from the void. It sounded like the roar of a god. Before the eyes of countless people, the shadow of a huge god clad in armor reached into the void with one palm. Light and shadow changed in the sky above him, and there were three huge mountains that were incomparably heavy. Even though it was just an illusion of a mountain range, anyone who looked at it would feel a tremendous pressure, and they could not help but tremble in fear and worship. Mount Sami, the Khagan court of the Western Turkic Khaganate, was also where Ishbara Khagan resided. It was said that in the skies above the Western Turkic Khaganate, those ancient beings of Turkic history had once battled in the sky. In the end, this battle had inadvertently caused a divine mountain to fall from the sky and into the mortal world, becoming the present Mount Sanmi of the Western Turkic Khaganate. A good Elan had always been a member of the imperial clan of the Western Turkic Khaganate, possessing a branch of the imperial family's bloodline. This Mount Sami divine art was something that a good Elan had learned from the imperial clan. It was extremely powerful and lethal, and in the entire Western regions, it was undoubtedly one of the best divine arts. In the history of the Western Turks, generation after generation had used this divine art to subdue many countries of the Western regions, causing these countries to fear the Western Turkic Khaganate and not dare to lightly offend it. Come! With a furious roar, a good Elan shot into the sky like an eagle soaring into the clouds and collided with Wang Chong. Boom! 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 Their energies fiercely clashed in the air, and a violet flame soared into the sky and wrapped around a good Elan's body. A good Elan's expression was savage, but he did not seem to care at all. Their fists and feet were extremely fast. Li Sai, let's go! Behind them, Huang Batian was clad in a suit of black armor. When he saw the intense battle ahead of him, he shot forward as well. Standing on the left and right of Li Sai, they charged forward with all their might. Stone General, Halo of Storm. The two fierce generals of the Qixi Protectorate pushed their strength to the limit, and with a heaven-shaking boom, their attacks exploded on Agudalan's body. Behind him, Elder Fong and Elder Du roared and lunged down from above, pressing down with the weight of Mount Tai as they joined forces with Wang Chong, Li Sai, and Huang Batian in attacking Agudalan. Boom! 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 Under the combined attacks of the five, Agudalan was instantly at a disadvantage. While the six were fiercely battling, the 800 Turkic warriors had also bypassed the pit and reached the gate of the Qixi armory. Brothers, this is our chance to show off. Marquis and the others are putting their lives on the line, so let's not slack off. Bastards! Do these Turkic barbarians really think that no one knows what they're doing in secret? Kill them. If you want to sneak attack the armory, you'll have to get through us first. In front of the gate of the Qixi armory, Su Kui, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and Chen Bin stood in a row. Clang clang clang. They unsheathed their Wuxia steel swords, their cold gleams dazzling in the darkness. Kill! Their eyes flashing with cold light, they immediately led their several hundred clan experts in heavy armor toward the 800 Turkic warriors. Swish! Chapter 833. The 600 men Su Kui had brought with him were all men who had been training with the Wuxian cavalry in the City of Steel. These people were cavalry themselves, so they were well versed in the tactics and strategies of cavalry. They were true elites. Although they were few in number, they possessed astonishing fighting power and were extremely skilled at dealing with cavalry. All of their techniques were ingenious, and they would never engage in a direct confrontation with cavalry. Thus, even though the Turks had the numerical advantage, they were unable to inflict any real damage. Not only that, besides their ingenious techniques, their physical strength was also formidable. Just like Su Kui, a single slash of their sword could cleave their enemy, horse, and even their thick armor in two. Swish! 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 One Wuxia steel sword after another silently cut through the night sky, a soundless dance of death in the darkness. There was only the sound of sharp blades cutting through flesh, and then countless heavy objects crashing to the ground. Aya! The Qixi armory was littered with corpses and screams. Pour the black oil. Use the black oil to deal with them. Light the fire. Burn these Tang people to death. There was no lack of shrewd and wise Turks, and the 800 Turkic warriors quickly began to move. Water sacks were opened and thrown into the air, pouring black oil over Su Kui's group. Some of the Turks had already prepared a match, and with a hiss, they threw it at the black oil. You've all gone mad. This black oil is meant to destroy the Qixi armory. There's no time. If we don't kill them, we'll all die. One of the Turks tried to stop the others, but he was quickly intercepted. With the crackle of fire, sparks flew towards Su Kui's group. The flames burned, but when they were still several feet away, they were stopped by an invisible wall of energy. The flames burned in the air, making it impossible to approach, much less get close. Profound martial realm. The hearts of the 800 Turkic warriors chilled at this sight. Profound martial experts had thick layers of stellar energy around their bodies, so the Arabian oil was incapable of effectively threatening them. You only realized it now? Su Kui sneered. Everyone listen up. Kill them. With this order, another 100 Turkic warriors were cut down from their horses. While the two sides were locked in a fierce battle, a group of Turkic soldiers had slipped past the two sides and stealthily made their way to the gate of the Qixi armory. But when they were around one zhang from the gate, something strange happened. No matter how the Turkic soldiers walked, they would always end up back at their original spot. The gate of the Qixi armory, which was 10 feet away, seemed to be in another distant space and time, and could not be approached no matter what. There seemed to be a huge chasm between the two sides. What's going on? Why can't we walk over? What the hell? Why are we back at the same place? What kind of sorcery did these Tang people use? It's too evil. Don't worry about it so much. Let's charge over on horseback. We ran into a wall. The Turkic soldiers felt their hair stand on end. They had used all sorts of methods to get past the gate and into the Chishi armory, but they couldn't even get close to the simple gate. The warriors of the Turkic steppe were all true warriors. Even if their heads fell to the ground, they would not so much as crease their brow. But the situation before them was far too bizarre and could not be explained with common sense. Everyone had a body full of power, but it was completely useless. The armory is such an important matter. Did you really think that we would do nothing and only send 600 men to deal with you? The half-kneeling Suki, who had just cut a Turkic horseman and his horse in two, inwardly sneered at these words. Marquis had foresight and had long ago made preparations to deal with the good Elan. However, the Chishi armory was no trifling matter, so how could they not make any preparations? Elder Fong and Elder Du had already set up an illusory formation and a bewildering formation in front of the western gate of the armory. From a distance, everything seemed normal, but if one got too close, they would immediately be bewildered by the illusory formation and led elsewhere, and the result would be the Turks crashing into the wall. This was because the gate they saw wasn't the real gate at all, and even if they used brute force to charge through, they would still be led elsewhere by the bewildering formation. This was because under the influence of the bewildering formation, even though they seemed to be charging in a straight line, they were actually moving in a crooked manner. Suki didn't know how this was done, but he did know that he had Elder Fong and Elder Du try it on him once. That day, Suki's face was swollen, his head dizzy, and he vomited for an entire day. These Turkic cavalry were weaker than him, so it would be strange if they could find the main gate. Brothers, charge! Kill all of these Turks, and let them know the might of us Tang people. Suki roared and charged forward, his woozy steel sword slashing at the hooves of his steeds. Clang! Just as Suki had killed more than 20 Turkic experts, and their corpses were scattered all over the ground, a metallic whistle suddenly sounded. An oddly shaped golden saber abruptly descended from the sky, striking the spine of Suki's woozy steel sword. It knocked away the woozy steel sword in Suki's hand, allowing him to avoid the misfortune of having 4 hooves sliced off. An expert! Suki's eyelids twitched as he exclaimed in surprise. To be able to accurately strike the spine of his sword, and avoid the sharp edges of his sword, this wasn't a feat that any ordinary martial artist could achieve. You scoundrel, your opponent is me. Don't bully those lowly soldiers. In the blink of an eye, a cold voice, speaking in the Han language that he had never learned in his life, sounded from above him. Suki raised his head and saw a fierce-looking Turkic commander, dressed in wolf armor, viciously glaring at him. Compared to the surrounding cavalry, this Turkic commander stood out like a crane among chickens, his aura clearly much stronger. Ha, interesting. If you want to fight, then come. Suki smiled, delighted instead of alarmed. Gripping his sword with both hands, he transformed into a dazzling flower of swords that lunged at the Turkic commander. At almost the same time, Chung Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and Chen Bin were also encountering their own opponents. Clang clang clang. Icy flowers of swords flashed through the night sky as the two groups fiercely battled. Furious roars, screams, and the neighing of Nei's horse blended together in front of the Chishi armory. In the distance, the Chishi Protectorate headquarters was deathly still and pitch black. Everyone seemed to have a tacit understanding that they couldn't hear anything. While Suki's side was in a stalemate, Wang Chang's side was completely one-sided. Neigh! Rumble! Warhorses began to drop to the ground in fear, the thuds of their bodies echoing over the battlefield. The 4,200 men that a good Elan had sent out were utterly routed by the Wuxian cavalry. Simply no match for them. In a single clash, more than 1,800 men had died. This sight made a good Elan's heart bleed, and he felt even worse than if he had been surrounded. This was a surprise attack, not a true battle. Thus, a good Elan had not brought all his men, only a few elites. For a surprise attack, 5,000 men was already quite a lot. But a good Elan had not expected that the elites he had been relying on would be so weak in front of Wang Chong. Although he had long ago known that Dian Mangpo's White Braves had been completely wiped out at the Triangular Gap, only when he was truly fighting with the Tang people did he understand what sort of pressure Dian Mangpoch had been facing. Too powerful. Too powerful. Only the Khan's most elite Sami army, the Wolf God army, and the Golden Tint army can contend against them. A good Elan felt like a storm had swept through his mind, and he was deeply shaken. He knew that the several thousand men in Wuxiang's city of steel were formidable, but he hadn't expected them to be this formidable. This wasn't something that the people around him could deal with. If this continued, the people around him would all die here. Retreat! Retreat! Everyone retreat! A good Elan was both shocked and infuriated. His dantian exploded, forcing back the five, and then a good Elan let out a shrill whistle. Bam! This shrill cry soared into the sky, echoing far into the night. Awa! A shrill wolf howl resounded through the night, and as if it was some sort of signal, the howls began to come from the distance like a tide. Wolves! This Agud Elan really is leading a wolf pack into battle. As Wang Chong listened to the distant howls and the incoming wolf army, a glimmer of light flashed through his eyes. Of the great powers surrounding the Tang dynasty, the Turks were the most special. This was because besides their regular soldiers, they could often mobilize a large number of wolves to fight alongside the army. Although a single wolf was nothing to fear for a fully armored soldier, when the number of wolves reached a certain level, everything was different. Thus, the true fighting power of the Turks could not be measured in numbers. This was also the greatest headache for the soldiers of the northern frontier when facing the Turks. Although Wang Chong would become the Grand Marshal of the world in the future, the forces of the steppe would have long since declined, and he would have no chance of fighting. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen a wolf pack fight in a regular army. It seems like you've made ample preparations, but alas, it's useless. Wang Chong sneered. If the unparalleled Wuxiang cavalry, hailed as the #1 cavalry of the world, couldn't even deal with a pack of wolves, then their title of #1 would be in vain. Boom! Just when Agud Elan was about to retreat, Wang Chong stepped forward, following Elder Fong, Elder Du Li Sai, and Huang Batian to hold down Agud Elan. Haha, Protector General, I haven't even agreed, so why are you in such a rush to leave? It's rare for you to come here, so why don't you stay here for the night? After all, I can even make a wooden steel for you. Chapter 834. Bastard! Agud Elan's eyes blazed with rage. Wang Chong was just a youth who had risen after the Tang dynasty, while he had been the Yabgu of the Turks for 10-some years. In terms of age alone, he was old enough to be Wang Chong's uncle. In all his years in the western regions, even Foman Linta had to treat him with some respect. When had he ever been made such a fool of? Whether or not I can leave, I'll kill you today. Agud Elan's rage flared, and instead of retreating he charged forward. Waves of scorching energy erupted from his body as Agud Elan used the Mount Sami divine art. Mount Sami shall fall, and the god realm shall descend. Light and shadow flickered in the sky, and a huge shadow of Mount Sami appeared in the void, emitting a boundlessly heavy aura. Above Mount Sami, there was an enormous impact that caused people's hearts to tremble. Their souls were filled with terror as they fell from the sky. Mount Sami had fallen, and the god realm had descended. This was the legend of the steppe, the scene of the war between the gods. When Mount Sami, which had originally belonged to the god realm, fell to the mortal world, it was a calamity. To the Turks of the steppe, this was their most dreaded doomsday. Rumble! Agud Elan ignored them. His body swelled and his aura intensified, making him seem like a god. Gathering all his strength, he avoided Elder Fong, Elder Du, Li Sai, and Huang Batian. The image of Mount Sami appeared on his saber, and it seemed to gather all the energy of the god realm as it slashed at Wang Chong's head. In the face of all this, Wang Chong grinned, showing no fear. Although his cultivation level was lower than Agud Elan's, his karmic battle armor gave him an extremely high defense. With his current Saint Martial cultivation, all of Agud Elan's attacks were greatly weakened. Come! Wang Chong made no attempt to dodge. Gathering all his energy, he slammed into Agud Elan like a meteor. As they clashed, violet flames began to rise as Wang Chong used his stellar energy to attack Agud Elan. These violet flames originated from the energy of Lu Wu, and they were incredibly effective against Saint Martial experts. In the Battle of the Triangular Gap, Wang Chong had used this move to push Dian Mangpoch down to Tier 4 or 5 of the Saint Martial realm. Now he was using this same move against a good Elan. But a moment later, just when Wang Chong was preparing to fight with a good Elan Bzizi, in a flash of light and a cold gust of wind, a good Elan vanished. When Wang Chong focused his gaze, he saw that a good Elan was actually fleeing. They had been so aggressive and bold before, but it turned out that it was just a tactical cover for their final retreat. Ha ha ha, good Elan, I truly overestimated you. But do you really think that you can escape like this? Wang Chong was not alarmed by this sight, but rather delighted. A general who only thought about escaping would only be able to use 70% of his strength at most. Although he was rather surprised, if a good Elan thought that he could escape unscathed like this, then he was truly underestimating him. Elder Fong, Elder Du. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong called out. Yes, Marquis. Elder Fong and Elder Du had solemn expressions. The two of them had long been prepared for this, and they were just waiting for Wang Chong's order. Boom! Without any hesitation, just as a good Elan was fleeing in the opposite direction, Elder Fong and Elder Du kicked hard, immediately sending a rock flying into the distance. What's that? A good Elan felt a black object fly past the corner of his eyes, and his heart skipped a beat. He instinctively glanced at it. When he saw that it was just a rock, he suddenly had an indescribable strange feeling. What is this brat doing? A good Elan could be considered experienced and knowledgeable in the western regions, but he had never seen such a strange situation. However, he did not have time to think about it, and the direction in which the rock was thrown was not toward him. Thus, he did not pay it any mind and continued to flee. Behind him, Wang Chong saw this scene, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He did not even give chase. Even though a good Elan was known as the Black Wolf Yabgu, his knowledge was still too shallow. Not only did he not have any concept of the bewildering formations and illusion formations of the Central Plains, he had probably never even heard of them before. Since that was the case, he could not be blamed. Here, Wang Chong watched as the rock fell to the ground, and he muttered in his heart. In the next moment, a sudden change occurred. The ground and the surroundings trembled, and smoke and dust rose into the sky. The smoke and dust turned into gray walls that surrounded the surroundings. A good Elan, who had already run more than 10 zhang away, was immediately blocked by this gray fog wall. The originally clear path ahead of him immediately vanished after the appearance of this tall fog wall. Everything was hazy in all directions. Not good. A good Elan was caught off guard by this sudden turn of events, and he couldn't help but pale in fright. There was no time to think. The moment the wall of dust appeared, a good Elan gathered all the stellar energy in his body. Like a meteor, he not only did not slow down, but suddenly accelerated, fiercely charging at the wall of dust, hoping to smash through it with one blow. Rumble! The earth quaked and the sky swayed. The scene of a good Elan smashing through the dust wall did not occur. Instead, the powerful impact caused a series of unexpected changes. With a deafening boom, the world in a good Elan's eyes suddenly turned upside down, and like a spinning stone plate, it caused a good Elan's body to spin. What is going on? Even though a good Elan's reputation as the Black Wolf Yabgu had shaken the western border, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright upon encountering a situation that couldn't be explained with common sense or resolved with power. Rumble! After an indeterminate amount of time, which seemed like only a moment, but also like countless long centuries, everything finally came to a stop. Black Wolf Yabgu, sorry to keep you waiting. A familiar voice with a hint of laughter suddenly sounded in his ears. A good Elan opened his eyes and saw that Wang Chong, Li Sai, Huang Batian, and the strangely dressed Elder Fong and Elder Du had been waiting for him for a long time. His heart immediately sank to the bottom of the lake. A good Elan knew that he really wouldn't be able to escape this time. Vast Universe Art. Great Inyang Art. Halo of Storm. Stone General. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Elder Fong, and Elder Du raised their strength to the limit the moment a good elan was sent back by the formation's power. All kinds of attacks covered the sky and swept out like a violent gale. Awa! Outside the formation, tens of thousands of giant green wolves bared their fangs and leaped into the air, pouncing on the Wuxian cavalry. Each Wuxian cavalryman faced 3 or 4 giant green wolves, which simultaneously attacked the horses' tails, stomachs, and riders. Any other cavalryman would have been flustered by now, but Wang Chong's Wuxian cavalry were all well-trained and extremely powerful. Their greatest strength was their perfect teamwork. Puffed, puffed, swoosh. Iron spears and longswords were as fast as lightning, flying over from other directions. Every spear was accurate and ruthless, aimed at the heads, hearts, and other vital points of the green wolves. With just a single move, a huge green wolf that looked extremely sturdy and had an extremely strong life force immediately died. All the Wuxian cavalry worked together to kill the wolves on the enemy's bodies. With 3 riders standing side by side, they could kill 5 or 6 wolves in the blink of an eye. No matter how many wolves charged at them, the Wuxian cavalry were like reefs in the ocean, immovable and unshakable. The warriors of the Turkic steppe all felt a chill run down their spines when they saw this. The green wolves of the Turkic steppe had never been the main fighting force, so no one had ever hoped that these wolves could win a battle. But this was the first time these warriors of the Turkic steppe had ever seen such an efficient slaughter of a wolf pack, with no unnecessary movements and flawless coordination. This was the first time these warriors of the Turkic steppe had seen something like this. Run! We're no match for them. No. Lord Yabgu has disappeared. I don't know what sort of evil art they used to trap Lord Yabgu in there. We have to think of a way to save Lord Yabgu. While all the Turkic warriors were stunned by the ruthlessness and efficiency of the Tang people's cavalry, another group of Turkic cavalry began to madly charge toward the place where a good elan had been trapped. Kiai, one of the Turkic generals, bared his teeth and howled, immediately ordering the several hundred wolves to charge forward with no regard for their own safety. No one should think about saving that Turkic Yabgu today. Since they want to die, let's kill them all. 100-man commander of the Wuxian cavalry stood at the front of the group, his eyes exuding a chilling light. Kail. With this order, he pointed his spear forward, and the 100-man Wuxian commander immediately charged forward. Behind him, the other 100 Wuxian cavalry automatically assembled into a small arrow formation with him at the center and charged forward. Awa! The wolves howled as the 100-man Wuxian cavalry left their mounts in disarray. Whether it was the wolves or the Turkic warriors, they were all cut down like a hot knife through butter. Charge! The other Wuxian cavalry used this chance to give chase. With the whinnying of the neigh horses and the cold gleam of their swords, the cries of Turkic warriors could be heard as they fell to the ground. In just a few rounds, the 5,000 Turkic cavalry that a good elan had brought with him had been reduced to less than 1,000. Run! They're not human. Run! At this sight, the remaining Turkic cavalry finally lost all will to fight and began to scatter in all directions. Meanwhile, the stellar energy in the formation set up by Elder Fong and Elder Du began to rumble, and all the origin energy in the world began to fluctuate. All kinds of techniques and martial arts clashed against one another, the battle reaching its climax. Chapter 835. Whoosh! Within the formation, Wang Chong slowly withdrew his energy and his hands as he gave a long sigh. As the last bit of Brigadier General Saint Martial energy flowed into his body, Wang Chong felt the stellar energy in his body roil like a river. His cultivation rose from Saint Martial Tier 1 to Saint Martial Tier 2, and then it soared until it finally stopped at Saint Martial Tier 3. This shouldn't be the case. Just what sort of evil art is this? A weak voice, as thin as a mosquito's buzz, came from up ahead, tinged with the scent of death. A good elan's body was thin, and his hair was sparse, making him look like a mummy. Only a layer of skin remained on his body, giving him a terrifying appearance. But in this state, a good elan was still alive, his eyes still fixed on Wang Chong. The great Yinyang heaven creation art, the #1 evil art of the Central Plains. Wang Chong smiled as he stood up, fulfilling Agudaland's dying wish. Evil art, so that's how it is. Agudaland's eyes were dazed, and then the light in his eyes was extinguished like a candle in the wind. Bang! His body slumped to the ground. Congratulations to user for killing Agudaland and removing another major threat to Chishi. In addition, the Black Wolf Yabgu has died in battle, causing a major event that has changed the course of the Western Turkic Khaganate's history. User is rewarded with 2,000 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. User has successfully saved the mission, the war horses of the Tang dynasty, and avoided the penalty for failure. At this moment, the Stone of Destiny's voice sounded in Wang Chong's mind. A smile appeared on Wang Chong's face. Killing Agudaland had given him 2,000 points of destiny energy, and when added to the rewards from before, Wang Chong now had 4,670 points of destiny energy. This way, I can go to the Stone of Destiny to exchange for another batch, Wang Chong thought to himself. Along the way, Wang Chong had gradually discovered that in order to obtain a large amount of destiny energy, the best way was to kill some of the extremely powerful and important figures on the other side. These characters were often related to the fate of the other empires, and from there, they would receive huge rewards for changing history. I'll store these destiny energy points for now. When I need them in the future, I'll use them to exchange for some very important abilities, Wang Chong thought. After his battle with Dian Mangpoj at the Triangular Gap, Wang Chong had spent a large amount of destiny energy to purchase the karmic battle armor, and he was gradually beginning to taste the sweetness of the Stone of Destiny's rewards. The Stone of Destiny actually had some extremely powerful treasures that played a decisive role in battles between top-notch experts. However, these treasures often cost a lot of points to exchange, but everything was worth it. The more energy points spent, the more powerful the treasure. Elder Fong, Elder Du. Wang Chong turned his head and glanced at the two chief of Wuxiang. The two understood and began to form seals with their hands, unleashing waves of stellar energy. Rumble! The earth trembled as the dust around the Chishi armory began to disperse. The ground was strewn with corpses and rivers of blood. Not even the darkness of night could conceal the thick stench of blood in the air. Marquis, the battle is over. All the Turks have been annihilated. Only 400 to 500 managed to escape. We've also captured a few captives. May I ask what we should do next? Wang Chong had barely crossed the edge of the formation when a scout captain walked over, his body reeking of blood and spear in hand. Forget about those who escaped. There's no need to pursue them. As for the captives, bring them all back. In addition, inform everyone to withdraw. Wang Chong indifferently said. He was still extremely satisfied with the results of this battle. Although the ground in front of the Chishi armory was littered with corpses, the vast majority of them were Turks and the corpses of the giant wolves. The Wuxiang cavalry had suffered very few casualties, the majority of them only suffering light injuries. Marquis. The clopping of hooves could be heard as Suki rode over on a warhorse. The people of the Chishi Protectorate have heard the commotion and are rushing over. Should we go meet with them and hand over our duties? Wang Chong followed Suki's gaze and saw a faint glow of fire in the distance. The fire was moving toward them, accompanied by the clopping of hooves. After so long, the Chishi Protectorate had finally responded. Some people had come to investigate, but from the sound of hooves, not many people had come. Forget it. Now's not the time to meet. Inform everyone to quickly leave. As for the armory, there's no need to worry about it for now. Let them handle it. Yes, Marquis. Before the people of the Chishi Protectorate could arrive, Wang Chong and his 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry had already left. Not long after they left, a fierce-looking general of the Chishi Protectorate arrived, accompanied by more than 2,000 soldiers, torches in hand. The sight of the hellish scene in front of the Chishi armory caused everyone to grimace. Some of them had long ago turned pale and seemed on the verge of vomiting. Too formidable. Look at the insignia on their bodies. Each of them has the image of a wolf's head. This is the insignia of the Turkic warriors. These are all true warriors. If I remember correctly, these people should be the elites of the army, and only the legendary Black Wolf Yabgu can mobilize them. These fellows love ambushes. And the last time they were mobilized, more than 1,000 people died in the estate, including quite a few of the generals skilled in battle. I didn't think that they would die here. It's too tragic. Look at their wounds, and there's no second wound. Too powerful. Just who did this? This sort of fighting power is simply terrifying. Fortunately, they came to help us. If they were with the Turks, we would have been dead long ago. The sight of the Turks dying so wretchedly made everyone's hearts palpitate in fear. The blood flowing from these people was warm, and it seemed like they had all been slaughtered in a very short amount of time. This sort of fighting power was enough to make one's scalp go numb. Before this, none of them had dared to imagine that Qixi would have such a powerful army. Did you get a good look? In a place that no one was paying attention to, the fierce-faced general of the Qixi Protectorate said in a low voice, a rather unsightly expression on his face. I didn't get a good look, but it's very similar to those people from the Wuxiang city of steel. In Qixi, only they have this sort of strength. After a few moments of thought, he raised his head and probed. My lord, they shouldn't be far away. Sir, they shouldn't be too far away. Should we chase after them? There's no need. After a few moments of thought, the general quickly shook his head. In Qixi, that person is a taboo. No one dares to recklessly approach him. It's best if we don't touch this misfortune. Let's quickly clean up this place. Yes, my lord. After traveling several hundred li, Wang Chong finally reached Wuxiang's city of steel. It was already the Zhou period, and the world was dark and devoid of light. The city of steel was also deathly still, everyone in a deep slumber. However, Steel Gate's gates were currently open. A charming figure dressed in snow-white clothes rode a large white horse, a smile on the corners of her lips, a sweet smile on her face, as if she was a fairy that descended into the world of mortals, silently waiting at the city gates. How was it? My plan wasn't bad, right? Seeing Wang Chong leading the way back, Su Yiqin's eyes flashed, and she immediately rode forward to greet him, her head slightly raised as she proudly spoke. Haha, of course. Don't you know who came up with this plan? Wang Chong couldn't help but laugh as he saw Su Yiqin's coquettish appearance. The two of them had a tacit understanding that the other was referring to the letter that had tricked a good Elan and the Yabgu. The letter truly was fake, but the contents were true. Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, had truly been released from the imperial prison, and the berserker syndrome in his body had exploded on the street, causing him to crash into the carriage of a princess. However, Wang Bei had not killed the princess, nor had he caused a massive massacre. On the contrary, just as he was about to lose his mind, Wang Bei had suddenly controlled himself. This had never happened before. After this matter, Wang Bei had written him a letter, telling him that he would soon arrive in Wuxiang and help him conquer the western regions. This was definitely the best news Wang Chong had heard in a while. This letter had already reached Wang Chong's hands a few days ago, but it was later seen by Su Yiqin. She used it to confuse a good Elan, causing him to lower his guard and send out his troops in advance. A good Elan was truly cautious. Even though he had followed Wang Chong and discovered that he had left Qixi and San Pass, he had still sent a letter to investigate Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei. Alas, as the devil grew a foot, the Tao grew a zhang. No matter how formidable a good Elan was, he had still lost to Wang Chong and Su Yiqin. In the end, he had died in Qixi Armory, all his cultivation going to Wang Chong. But don't be careless about this matter. Don't let it be like the triangular gap last time, where your credit was stolen. Make some preparations, and write a memorial to the imperial court. We should at least get some credit. Su Yiqin said. Haha, you know that I don't really care about these things, but what you say is reasonable. I'll leave the memorial to you. Wang Chong smiled and waved his hand behind him. The group quickly passed through the gate and entered the city of steel. Flap flap. A few moments later, a messenger pigeon soared into the night sky, quickly vanishing in the direction of the capital. The night passed, and in the morning, Wang Chong had just finished a bowl of bird's nest porridge when the door to his room suddenly opened and a figure barged in. Marquis, something's happened. Suki shouted the moment he entered the room. What's wrong? Chapter 836. Incredible. Marquis, do you remember the group of captives we captured yesterday? Suki excitedly said, his face red. I do. Did something happen? Wang Chong asked in confusion. After yesterday's battle, he remembered that someone had reported to him that they had captured a group of captives. But Wang Chong didn't understand what was so special about this matter. Marquis, we really did catch a big fish this time. One of those captives was a prince of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and it was Ishbara Khagan's most beloved fourth prince, the son of the Khaganate's Khatan. Agud Alan had originally planned on bringing him here to earn merit, so that Ishbara Khagan could properly confer him an official title. I didn't expect for him to be captured by us. Suki hurriedly said, his voice ragged. Ah! Alarmed, Wang Chong abruptly stood up from his seat. In the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the status of princes was even higher than in the Central Plains. The reason was very simple. The two Turkic Khaganates did not have the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, so the Turkic Khaganate did not have many princes and princesses. A prince born to a Turkic Khatan, and one favored by Ishbara Khagan at that, would have an unimaginable status in the Western Turkic Khaganate. Wang Chong had not expected that in dealing with Agud Alan, he would end up capturing a prince of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Marquis, in the morning, we took out all the captives from last night, and prepared to interrogate them to see if we could dig up anything useful to the Western Turks. But at this time, we noticed that there was one person who didn't seem right. His attire is very luxurious, and he doesn't look like an ordinary soldier. His temperament is also different, and he seems to have a very high status. No matter how you look at it, he doesn't look like someone who would appear in the army. He doesn't fit in with a group of prisoners. Although it had been Suki who had informed Wang Chong, it had been Chun Bin who had discovered the Turkic prince. In the City of Steel's underground prison, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Chung Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Elder Fong, and Elder Du were all gathered together, listening to Chun Bin's explanation. At the time, I also felt that there was something wrong with him, so I found someone who could speak Turkic, but I didn't expect him to be a Turkic prince. I didn't dare to confirm it, so after some thought, I called Hilayeg over. He had connections with the Turks, so he should be familiar with all the members of the Turkic imperial clan. When Hilayeg came, he immediately recognized him as the Turkic fourth prince. Yes, Wang Chong nodded as he peered through a small metal window, more than 6 feet off the ground. The Turkic fourth prince was a young man of 21 or 22. Although his clothes were filthy from last night's battle, if one looked carefully, one could still see that they were dressed in an extremely ornate Turkic robe. He truly is a member of the Turkic imperial clan. As Wang Chong looked at the blazing suns on the Turkic youth's clothes, and the image of a lone wolf howling at the sun, a thought flashed through his mind. Although Wang Chong had interacted very little with the Turkic imperial clan, he knew that the sacred mountain of the Turks was Mount Sunday. Besides the wolves, they also worshipped the blazing suns in the sky. This was a symbol that only the imperial clan of the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates could use, signifying a noble bloodline. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong opened the door and walked in. No, don't kill me. I'm a prince of the Turks. I can give you a lot of money. Don't kill me. The young Turkic prince seemed to be given a huge fright, his hands and feet curling up into a ball as his body trembled. If one looked carefully, one would realize that this Turkic prince was none other than the young Turkic man, who had accompanied the black wolf Yabgu Agud Alan. Wang Chong slightly frowned at the Turkic prince's frightened expression, not even daring to raise his head. Marquis, this fellow seems like a soft-footed shrimp. Last night's slaughter probably scared him. Suki leaned over and whispered into Wang Chong's ear. Wang Chong fell silent for a few moments, and then he nodded. In last night's battle, the Wuxian cavalry had dealt with these Turkic elites as easily as cutting through melons and vegetables. Although the Turks were innately brave and fierce in battle, this Turkic prince had grown up on Mount Sami, in the Khagan's court. He had only seen a handful of true battles, and even if he had, it had always been in the rear, when the Turks had the upper hand. This was probably the first time in his life that 4 to 5,000 Turkic warriors had been slaughtered like sheep. Starting from now, this would become a nightmare for him for a very long time to come. Just now you said that you could give me a lot of money? Wang Chong squatted down and suddenly asked. Right. No matter how much you want, I'll give it to you. Pearls, agate, gold. My royal father and mother will definitely agree. The young Turkic prince was at first dazed, but he quickly reacted and anxiously said. He had realized that this young Han leader was not speaking the Han language, but the Turkic language that he was most familiar with. Ha, I don't need pearls or agate. As for gold, how much can you Turks have? Will your royal father and mother be willing to give it to you? Wang Chong chuckled. The young Turkic prince was dumbfounded. The Turks were different from the people of the other empires. Their commerce was not as developed, and they did not have as many resources. This meant that even if the Turks had a great deal of wealth, they would find it very difficult to buy as many things as they could in the Central Plains. In other words, the wealth of the Turks would only be of value when trading with the other empires. Thus, the Turks were not very interested in amassing wealth. People like Hulaeg were very rare in both the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates. In addition, the Turkic steppe did not produce gold. Even if one gathered all the gold from both Turkic Khaganates, there wouldn't be much left. From this perspective, it was truly difficult to say just how much gold Ishbara Khagan was willing to pay for a single prince. After all, the gold of the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates was used to buy luxurious objects for the enjoyment of the nobles and imperial household. Ha. Wang Chong laughed as he saw the dazed expression on the Turkic prince's face. The Turkic prince was terrified by this laughter, and his entire body began to tremble. Wait a moment. I know you need war horses. I can give you a large number of war horses. Our western Turkic Khaganate has the best war horses on the steppe. I can give you as many as you want. The Turkic prince suddenly shouted, but this time, Wang Chong pretended not to hear. Shaking his head and smiling, he turned around and left the prison under the terrified gaze of the prince. Behind him, the prison door slammed shut. The Turkic prince seemed like he had been struck by lightning, his face pale as he slumped to the ground. Hey, my lord, why didn't you agree to his request just now? The fourth prince has a very high status in the western Turkic Khaganate. Although the western Turkic Khaganate doesn't have much gold, Ishbara Khagan would definitely agree if he wanted war horses. According to the rules of the steppe, if a noble is captured, they will definitely pay a large sum of money to ransom them. And he's a prince. Just as Wang Chong walked out of the prison, a slightly plump figure suddenly appeared around the corner. This figure was like a cat and was rushing toward him, as if trying to hide from something. I know, Wang Chong indifferently said, not even glancing at Hulaeg. You know, Hulaeg's face froze in shock. Based on his understanding of Wang Chong, he was in dire need of war horses. Moreover, Wang Chong had most likely agreed to help him because of those 300,000 war horses. But he hadn't expected that Wang Chong would give up such an excellent opportunity. This left him extremely confused. But why? Because I've already thought it over. I'll leave this matter to you. Under Hulaeg's dumbfounded gaze, Wang Chong patted him on the shoulder and quickly left. Hulaeg was left standing, his lips trembling as if he wanted to say something, but his mind was blank and he hesitated. After some time, Hulaeg seemed to understand something, and his eyes shone with delight. With a shout, he jumped up and down in excitement. Wonderful! Putting aside the activity on Wang Chong's end, from the northeastern part of Chishi, across the vast and overgrown Turkic steppe, several thousand li to the extreme north of Chishi, there was a massive and majestic mountain range that seemed like some prehistoric beast. Anyone who saw it would sigh in admiration and feel insignificant. Mount Sami. If one looked carefully at the western Turkic Khagan's court of Khagan, one would realize that this majestic mountain range was actually composed of 3 mountains, 2 low and 1 high. The highest peak was where the current Great Khan of the Western Turks, Ishbara Khagan, resided. The Turkic steppe had always been a vast expanse of flat land, never a place with many mountains or rivers. From Chishi to the north, there wasn't even a single protruding hill in the Western Turkic steppe, much less a large mountain. Thus, one could imagine the significance that Mount Sami represented to all the Turks when it appeared on the steppe like a massive beast. Every year, the Turkic Khagans would go to various places to inspect the various tribes, so the ivory tent representing the Khagan was always moving around. But of the Western Turkic Khagans, there was only one place that was recognized: Mount Sami. What? A good Alan was killed, and the fourth prince was captured? A Chishi without Fomenlinta actually managed to defeat you, and even capture the fourth prince. Chapter 837. Reporting to Khagan. Although Fomenlinta is not present, there is an extremely formidable Tang people youth in Wuxiang's city of steel called Wang Chong. He pretended to leave Chishi to lure the black wolf Yabgu into a trap. He was the one who ambushed us, killed Yabgu, and captured the fourth prince. A Turkic warrior who had luckily escaped from the Chishi armory kneeled on the ground, his face as white as paper and sweat pouring down his face, as he stared at the furious Ishbara Khagan. They had immediately returned to this place after escaping from Chishi. A Yabgu had been killed, and the fourth prince had been captured. This was no small matter, and it was not something they could bear the responsibility for. City of Steel? Upon hearing this name, the tall and burly Turkic man in the golden tent, his eyes widened and his anger subsided. You're a demon god. You're a demon god. You're a demon god, and you're a demon god. Isn't that the youth of the Tang dynasty who defeated the Karluks and Daloan Ruozan in the War of the Southwest? I had the Black Wolf Yabga kill him, but he still hasn't finished his task? Lord Yabga did want to act, but when he realized that the Uzun had acted before him, his lordship wanted to borrow the hands of the Uzun to kill him, so he gave up on the idea. But he didn't expect that the Uzun Empire's Dayan Mangpoj would die at the hands of Wang Chong at the Battle of the Triangular Gap. Thus, his lordship delayed until he was ambushed by that Wang Chong and killed in Chishi. The Turkic warrior who had returned to report the news kneeled on the ground and whispered, "What? Such a thing happened?" Ishbara Khagan's pupils constricted, and he finally calmed down. In the western regions, the Western Turks had two enemies. One was the Tang dynasty, but they had always been on the defensive. Moreover, their supply lines were long and their mobility poor, so they posed little threat. The real enemy was the Uzun people on the opposite plateau. Even though they were separated by the Tang dynasty's Chishi, the Western Turks and the Uzun had fought several times over the leadership of the western regions. The Turks actually had a better understanding of the generals on the Uzun plateau. Ishbara Khagan had some understanding of Dayan Mangpoj. He had once led Uzun's forces around Chishi and launched sneak attacks on the Turkic steppe, inflicting heavy losses on the Turkic army twice in a row. This was a madman with extraordinary combat prowess. He was a brigadier general. Ishbara Khagan lived far away on Mount Sami. He had never paid much attention to this kind of regional war. He had never imagined that one of the top figures of the Western Turkic Khaganate would die at the hands of the seemingly unremarkable Wang Chong. If everything was true, he would have to reevaluate this Wang Chong. Khagan, at a time like this, you're still concerned about something like this? Is our Huar's life not important? While Ishbara Khagan was still in the middle of his interrogation, the voice of a woman came from the side, brimming with worry. No matter who that Wang Chong is, the urgent task at hand is to rescue my son. A Turkic woman dressed in luxurious clothes and exuding a noble aura walked out from behind Ishbara Khagan. Katun. The sight of this woman made the Turkic warrior on the ground shiver and lower his head even further. In all the Western Turks, only the mother of the fourth prince, Katun, could enter the golden tent at any time and interrupt Ishbara Khagan's words. "Why have you come?" Ishbara Khagan hurriedly stepped forward and took the woman's hand, a look of doting affection on his face. Ishbara Khagan had experienced many women in his life, but only this woman before him was the one he respected the most and doted on the most. The reason was very simple. Back when Ishbara was still a prince, if not for the assistance of this woman, he would not have been able to ascend to the throne amidst the chaos. Not only that, although this woman was over 40 and had already given birth to several children, the Katun had always taken good care of herself. Her skin and figure were like that of a girl in her 20s, not at all like that of someone in their 40s. If I didn't come, would I really have to watch Huor die at the hands of those Tang people of Qixi? Huor's life is hanging by a thread. Kagan, tell me, will you save Huor's life or not? The Khatan sternly said. Save, save, save. Huor is my own flesh and blood. I love him dearly, so how could I not save him? Come, come, hurry. Send someone to Wuxiang's city of steel. No matter what price we have to pay, we have to save the fourth prince. Ishbara Kagan's voice resounded over Mount Sanmi. Marquis, there's a Turkic emissary outside requesting an audience. He says that he wishes to negotiate with us regarding the captured fourth prince. Several days later, in Wuxiang's city of steel, Wang Chong was standing in front of his desk, reading through a report he had gathered. Suddenly, a scout hurriedly barged in and bowed. I won't see him. Wang Chong didn't even raise his head, his eyes still focused on the report in his hand, his face expressionless. The scout froze, his face filled with shock, but he quickly regained his composure. Yes, Marquis. With these words, he quickly left. Haha, Marquis, was I wrong? Ishbara Kagan and the Khatan are getting anxious. It's only been a few days, and they've already sent an emissary. As long as we don't agree for now and refuse them a few times, they'll get even more anxious. Milord will also be able to obtain even more benefits from the fourth prince. In this aspect, no one understands them better than I do. Once the scout left, Huleeg heartily laughed and immediately approached, his eyes shining. In the future, I'll leave this matter to you, including the Turkic emissaries. But Huleeg, you'd better think this through. I've investigated a few things. When a good Elan raided your estate, the fourth prince was also involved. Wang Chong finally raised his head from the letter and faintly smiled at Huleeg. The Turkic steppe was vast and sparsely populated, and not even Wang Chong had the ability to investigate. But the nearby western regions was the best place to gather information. The Hu, Turks and Arabs gathered there. So Wang Chong didn't need to expend much effort to obtain the information he wanted. Haha, what does that matter? I can take back all the things I lost. And even if he knows that I sold horses to you, I have a way to make him trust me and get Ishbara Kagan and the Khatan to pay the price we want. Huleeg looked at Wang Chong, said, a crafty light in his eyes. Although the Turks revered bravery, Huleeg was no warrior, but a shrewd merchant, and the #1 horse merchant of the Turkic steppe. When it came to business, he was completely different from others. Haha, that's even better. Wang Chong chuckled as he lowered his head and continued to read the news. While the emissaries of the Western Turkic Ishbara Kagan were running into a wall in Wuxiang's city of steel, in the distant capital of the Tang dynasty, the debate over the next Qixi Protector General had reached a fever pitch. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Black Tiger General Zhang Yi. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Crouching Wave General Duan Xian. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Frontier General Li Ji. In the short span of a few days, the number of candidates for Qixi Protector General had increased from 10 to more than 200. There were all sorts of reasons for their recommendations. Some had rich experience, some had experience leading the Hu, some had made rapid progress in strength, and some had performed exceptionally well in the last few years. Even though the vast majority of people didn't meet the requirements, the people who had recommended them all gave the same reason. Let them try. If they didn't try, how would they know that it wouldn't work? In the hall, the first row of civil and military officials was next to a scarlet pillar with a coiling dragon. The King of Song, dressed in his imperial robe, leaned against the coiling dragon pillar. As he listened to the voices in his ears, he couldn't help but give a long sigh. 7 or 8 days had passed, and not only had the debate over the Qixi Protector General not died down, it had only intensified. Everyone had their own goals, recommending the candidate that they felt was the most suitable for them. But truthfully speaking, even though there were more than 200 people, in the King of Song's mind, there was not a single one that was suitable. Whether it was his own recommendation of Wang Yan or King Qi's recommendation of Yao Guangyi, in the King of Song's mind, they were both barely satisfactory. Matters of state were no trifling matter. Thus, in this period of time, not even Wang Yan and the king of Song had been recommending much. A country can't go a day without a sovereign, and the border can't go a day without a general. Just who can replace Fomin Linta to oversee the border and protect Qixi? The king of Song raised his head to the majestic ceiling of the hall, his mind in turmoil. In truth, he didn't care about the arguments of the officials. What he cared about was the most suitable candidate. But finding a suitable candidate was easier said than done. The entire Tang dynasty only had a few great generals, and all of them were already in their respective positions. Finding another great general was not difficult, but simply impossible. This was the true reason why the problem of Qixi had still not been resolved. In the vast great Tang, could it be that you really can't find a suitable candidate? The king of Song couldn't help but deeply furrow his brow. This was an unsolvable conundrum. The problem of Qixi was far too complex. The Turks, the Uzan, the Arabs, Karak, Spazinu. And there was also the problem of the foreigners, and the Han within the Qixi protectorate. It was basically impossible to find someone who could satisfy all these conditions. This was what troubled the king of Song the most. The arguments in the hall were getting more and more intense. These arguments had been going on for several days, and just when the king of Song was about to leave in a huff, hurried footsteps came from outside the hall, reporting victory in Qixi. 4 days ago, the Black Wolf Yabgu of the Western Turkic Khaganate launched a night raid on the Qixi armory and was ambushed by Wuxiang's young Marquis Wang Chong and his soldiers. 4,568 Turkic elites were slain, including the Black Wolf Yabgu Agud Alan. A golden insignia guard held a golden ancient halberd in one hand, and a report in the other, as he respectfully knelt on the ground, not moving an inch. Rumble. The news brought by the Chamberlain of Imperial Insignia caused a huge uproar in the hall. Although not many people knew of the name Agud Alan, they all knew of the name Yabgu. Chapter 838. More importantly, although very few people knew the name of Agud Alan, the name of the Black Wolf Yabgu was frequently mentioned in the imperial court. This person's name was almost always on the list of invading enemies from Qixi and Baiting. This person was definitely one of the core members of the Western Turkic Khaganate's warmongering faction, one of the Turkic upper echelons that gave both Qixi and Baiting great headaches. No one had expected that this person, who had a reputation in the imperial court of the Tang dynasty, and was viewed by the Tang dynasty as a major threat to the northern steppe, would die at the hands of Wang Chong. How could this be? This Black Wolf Yabgu has always been crafty. Baiting and Qixi tried to kill him several times, but he always managed to escape. How could he die in Qixi? Fomin Linta wasn't able to kill him in Qixi, so how could Fomin Linta have left, leaving Qixi leaderless and the Black Wolf Yabgu dead? Could it be a false report? This kind of problem has occurred before. Everyone thought that the Black Wolf Yabgu had died in Baiting, but then he suddenly became as lively as a tiger and reappeared. How could this be? This sort of thing might happen to others, but how could it happen to the young Marquis? He made such a great contribution in the southwest that even His Majesty bestowed him a courtesy name. How could he not recognize the Black Wolf Yabgu? An official report of victory to the imperial court is no trifling matter. The hall was abuzz with chatter. All the military officials knew of the Black Wolf Yabgu's background and were stunned. As for the civil officials, although there were some who doubted Wang Chong, the majority firmly believed him. After all, Duke Jiao had been the head of the civil officials when he was still on the throne. Moreover, he was a person of noble character, a person of virtue and prestige, deeply respected by the people of the world. His grandson would never make a false report for the sake of military merit. Bring out the report. At this moment, a gentle voice came from the upper reaches of the hall. Chief Eunuch Gao Lisher, who was standing beside the Holy Emperor, waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and suddenly spoke. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the Guardian of Insignia, who had delivered the letter. They watched as the Guardian of Insignia stood up, passed through the center of the hall, and walked upwards. Amidst the crowd, no one noticed that the King of Song's gaze was closely following the figure of the Guardian of Insignia. His brows were tightly knitted together, as a vague thought flashed through his mind. In the great hall, Eunuch Gao received the memorial from the Golden Guards, and passed it behind the bead curtain. A moment later, the report reappeared in Eunuch Gao's hands. The identity of the Black Wolf Yabgu has been confirmed. The Yabgu's seal and tiger tally, as well as the Black Wolf Yabgu's head, are already on their way to the capital. Eunuch Gao's face was ruddy, and he smiled as he looked at the officials below the stage. Buzz! The hall buzzed with activity, and now, no one had any objections. Just like the Tang dynasty, high-ranking Turkic officials of the Yabgu's level all had their own Yabgu's seal on their bodies. The Yabgu's seal was the best way to verify one's identity. The Black Wolf Yabgu would never so easily discard his Yabgu's seal. If Wang Chong had killed the Black Wolf Yabgu in Qixi, and obtained the Yabgu's seal, then there was basically no doubt about the Black Wolf Yabgu's identity. I didn't think that he really would kill the Black Wolf Yabgu. Everyone in the hall felt a deep throbbing in their hearts. The Black Wolf Yabgu, who had dominated the northwest, and rarely met his match, had truly died at the hands of Wang Chong. This crafty foe had met his end in the northwest in such a shocking and unexpected manner, and the one who had killed him was a youth of 16 or 17. The Wang clan's Qilin son truly lives up to his reputation. Everyone was deeply stunned by this news. Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial. As the hall buzzed with chatter and the officials discussed, the King of Song suddenly stepped out of his ranks and loudly declared to the Holy Emperor. His words immediately attracted the attention of all the civil and military officials in the hall. Your Highness, the King of Song, speak. Eunuch Gao, who seemed to understand the will of the heavens, said with a faint smile. This subject has an idea about the candidate for the new Qixi Protector General. This lowly subject strongly recommends the young Marquis of Wuxiang, Wang Chong, to be the new Qixi Protector General. The King of Song clasped his hands and solemnly declared. Bang! Like a massive meteor crashing into the hall, the King of Song's words immediately set off a massive uproar among the officials. Absurd! Before the other officials could say anything, King Qi was the first to jump out. The King of Song, have you gone mad? That Wang Chong is only a half-grown brat, and you're actually recommending him for Qixi Protector General. Which one of the candidates recommended by these officials isn't more qualified than that Wang Chong? If even he can become Qixi Protector General, doesn't that mean anyone else can? How can a brat who still smells of his mother's milk convince the masses? King Qi was extremely agitated. Putting aside his personal grudges with the King of Song, and having clashed with the King of Song so many times, the King of Song's performance this time had left King Qi most shocked. No one with a brain would recommend a 16 or 17-year-old boy for the important position of Qixi Protector General. Even if he didn't have so many personal grudges with the King of Song, King Qi would never agree. This was the most absurd proposal King Qi had ever heard. Your Highness, forgive this one for being so bold. Although this old subject has always treated Your Highness with great respect, isn't Your Highness's proposal a little too rash? There is no precedent in the Empire for a 17-year-old to become Qixi Protector General and command tens of thousands of soldiers. Isn't it a little inappropriate for Your Highness to propose him as Qixi Protector General? Even the elderly imperial censor, how couldn't help but step forward and object. Your Highness, no. I know that Your Highness has been on good terms with the Wang clan for several generations, but the Qixi Protector General position concerns the safety of the entire western regions and the tens of thousands of soldiers in Qixi. Isn't putting a 17-year-old child in such an important position too childish? Abusi finds it difficult to agree. Even the Tongluo Great General Abusi, who rarely interfered in the court, couldn't help but step forward. In the Kunwa training camp, Wang Chong had tied up his son Abutong and hung him naked from a bamboo pole in front of everyone, causing the father and son to lose all face. The King of Song's proposal for Wang Chong to become Qixi Protector General was absolutely unacceptable to Abusi. That's right. There are quite a few who in the Qixi Protectorate, and after the regional commander's incident, the relationship between Wang Chong and them became very strained. The soldiers of Qixi even joined together to impeach Wang Chong and demand that he be executed. And now, Wang Chong has also impeached Fomin Linta. How can the Hu of Qixi submit to him? If he becomes Qixi Protector General, won't it cause Qixi to become even more divided? Not only will it not help Qixi's stability, it will only add hail to snow. Please forgive me for finding it very difficult to agree. Another official from the imperial court also stepped out and objected. That's right. Putting aside everything else, he probably won't be satisfied with just martial arts. This cannot be allowed. One official after another, the King of Song's words incited a massive debate in the court, with more than half of the civil and military officials standing up to oppose the King of Song. Your Highness, this time, even Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen was staring at the King of Song, his eyes wide and speechless. The King of Song's proposal was far too bold. Not even he could say such a thing. In terms of seniority, wasn't even Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, more suitable than Wang Chong? Wang Zhen simply couldn't understand why the King of Song would bring up Wang Chong instead of Wang Yan. Elsewhere, the newly appointed Minister of War, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, and Yang Zhao, who was standing next to the coiling dragon pillar, were also exchanging surprised glances. Not even they had expected the King of Song's proposal. But at a time like this, the two of them had wisely chosen to remain silent and watch the situation develop. The King of Song still maintained his calm, a smile on his lips as he listened to the fierce objections of the officials. The vague idea in his mind grew clearer and clearer, and the smile on his lips grew wider and wider. Your Majesty and my colleagues, I believe that the young Marquis, Wang Chong, is not only suitable for the position of Qixi Protector General, but also the best candidate. In the entire empire, there is no one more suitable than him for the position of Qixi Protector General. The King of Song had a composed expression, a faint smile on his face. His every movement exuded a powerful and infectious confidence. I know why all of you oppose him. It's just that he's young and inexperienced, not enough to convince the masses. Moreover, Wang Chong has clashed with all the Hu in the empire. But I believe that suitability for Qixi Protector General is based on ability, not these minor details. Qixi's position is extremely unique. It is the throat between the interior and the western regions. To the left is the tall and thin Uzun Plateau, where the Uzun cavalry could charge down at any moment and plunder the central plains. To the right is the Turkic steppe, the territory of the Western Turkic Khaganate. These two factions have always been a mortal malady to our Tang dynasty. We discussed the selection of Qixi Protector General as quickly as possible in order to prevent the soldiers of these two empires from invading in the chaos. But now, everyone can see what Qixi is like now that Fomin Linta has left. On the left is the Uzun Plateau. After the Battle of the Triangular Gap, the Uzun army suffered grievous casualties, at least 100,000 soldiers. Even an imperial brigadier general like Dian Mangpoch died there. Dusong Mangpoch has also fled, and it will probably be a very long time before they can find suitable soldiers to invade the interior. As for the east, the greatest danger is the Black Wolf Yabgu Agud Alan, but now, even Agud Alan is dead. And this is even when Wang Chong has not yet taken up the post of Qixi Protector General. Before he has even become Qixi Protector General, he has already done everything that a Qixi Protector General should do, resolving the complex situation of a pincer attack on Qixi. May I ask, if he is not suitable for Qixi Protector General, who is more suitable? The more the King of Song spoke, the clearer he became, and the more determined he was to recommend Wang Chong as Qixi Protector General. And have all of you forgotten how Wang Chong overturned the tide in the War of the Southwest and defeated Mengshi Zhao and Uzun? Even famed generals like Duan Gechuan, Huashu Huaitsong, and Daluan Ruozan had been defeated by him, and now Dusong Mangpoch had joined the fray as well. He had even survived such formidable foes in difficult circumstances, and he had even killed more than 400,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. If even this sort of experience was said to be insufficiently experienced, then what could be considered insufficiently experienced? In the Great Qin Empire of more than 1,000 years ago, Gan Luo became prime minister at the age of 12, and Wang Chong became Qixi Protector General at the age of 17. Chapter 839. It was true. Given Wang Chong's achievements, this was not something a 17-year-old youth could accomplish. Moreover, his actions could not be measured by age. King Song's words left everyone speechless, and for a moment, even King Qi found himself unable to find any words to refute. But according to the rules of the empire, Protector General and Great General need to be at least at the peak of the Saint Martial realm. Moreover, he has such a deep grudge with those who will definitely not submit to him. How can this matter be resolved? After some time, one of the generals who had vehemently opposed the King of Song finally stepped forward. But his voice was much softer and less intense. Ha ha ha, that's even easier to resolve. The King of Song heartily laughed. I recommended Wang Chong, because he can stabilize the situation in Qixi. Since his martial arts are still lacking, he can temporarily hold the post of Qixi Protector General. As for those they can be used as a test for him. If he can't even resolve this problem, then it will prove that I made the wrong choice, that he is not capable enough to hold the post of Qixi Protector General. When the time comes, Your Majesty can remove him from the post. As soon as Song Yunxuan's voice fell, even the general couldn't say anything to object. Preposterous, preposterous, preposterous. To let a 17-year-old boy hold the post of Qixi Protector General, you're insane. In any case, no matter what, I will never agree. King Qi finally couldn't hold back his rage. Haha, we're just recommending candidates. In the end, His Majesty will decide who the Qixi Protector General will be. As for your opinion, it's not important. Leave everything to His Majesty to decide. The King of Song heartily laughed, not arguing with King Qi. Instead, he turned his head to look at the figure seated behind the bead curtain, on the most exalted throne of the Central Plains, his expression brimming with confidence. The hall was quiet, no one speaking. From the beginning until now, it had been 7 or 8 days. Everyone had provided a total of more than 200 candidates, which was enough. It was time to choose the most suitable one. Approved, after what seemed like an instant, but also like countless eons. As everyone silently waited, a dignified and noble voice, like that of a god from the 9 heavens, resounded through the hall. At that moment everyone, including King Qi, was flabbergasted, their minds blank. Yes, Your Majesty. The next moment, the King of Song's voice reverberated throughout the hall. He looked excited. Although he tried his best to suppress it, he couldn't help but smile wider and wider. Success! His Majesty had actually approved of Wang Chong's proposal to replace Qixi Protector General. The King of Song was elated. This could be said to be the best news he had heard during this period of time. Wang Chong, I've tried my best to help you. The rest is up to you. The King of Song quietly said to himself, his mind recalling Wang Chong in distant Qixi. What? In the City of Steel, upon hearing the news from the capital, Wang Chong was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his ears. The King of Song recommended me to become Qixi Protector General, and His Majesty even approved it? He had been in Wuxiang for 3 or 4 months, fighting several major battles. But this news had left Wang Chong even more shocked and surprised. He had thought of many people, but he had never imagined that the King of Song would recommend him, and that the Holy Emperor had even approved it. Even with Wang Chong's ability to devise strategies that could determine victory from 1,000 li away, this news still left him flabbergasted. How could this be? I'm only 17. Given the style of the officials of the court, how could they allow a 17-year-old to assume the important position of Protector General? Where's the letter from the King of Song? Let me see it. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, truly stunned by this news. Haha, Marquis. Although Sir is only 17, no one in the City of Steel would dare to treat Sir as one. Ask the surrounding countries, whether it's the Uzan, the Turks, or the distant Mengshi Zhao of the southwest, who would dare to treat Sir as a 17-year-old. Suki couldn't help but chuckle as he handed over the letter from the King of Song to Wang Chong. The others around him also had the same reaction. No matter what others think, in our eyes, no one in the entire Tang dynasty is more suited to the position of Qixi Protector General than Marquis. In truth, the imperial court should have done this long ago. Chung Sanyuan and the others couldn't help but say, the imperial court values ability, not age. Why is Marquis so unconfident at a time like this? Even Li Sai opened his mouth at this moment. A buzzing voice came from beside his ear. It was as if a great bell had rung out. And even Li Sai opened his mouth. Wang Chong inwardly gave a bitter smile. He had been rather surprised, but he hadn't expected that his subordinates would be so unhappy. All of them felt that he should have been Protector General a long time ago. Hee, you're probably the only one who's still lost in the game. Even His Majesty thinks that you can do it. So do you think that you can't? At the very least, I believe in you. There's no problem. Su Yichin sat on an exquisite pear blossom chair, her fingers as white as spring onions. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. Although the King of Song's letter was rather surprising, it was not unexpected. As for the people gathered around Wang Chong, none of them were surprised. This was a person who could reverse the tides and pacify the Southwest. A person who could defeat the White Braves at the Triangular Gap, kill Dian Mangpoj, and scare away Dusong Mangpoj. A person who could trick a crafty and cautious person, like the Black Wolf Yabgua Gudalan, into a trap and bury him in Chishi. If not even this sort of person could become Chishi Protector General, then no one in the entire Tang dynasty could sit on this position. At the very least, this was what Su Yichin and the others thought. Wang Chong smiled, a warmth in his heart. He quickly calmed down and began to read the letter from the King of Song. In the letter, the King of Song gave a rough account of the matter, and he also told Wang Chong that this letter was just an advance notice. The official appointment from the imperial court would arrive soon, and the emissary announcing the decree had already left the capital for Wuxiang. But even so, the news of the appointment had already been sent to the Chishi Protectorate headquarters, as well as all the great generals and protector generals of the Tang dynasty on the border. All the titled generals of the Tang dynasty, whether Hu or Han, knew of this news. From a certain perspective, Wang Chong was already Chishi Protector General. In addition, the King of Song had also mentioned that Wang Chong's martial arts were insufficient, so he was only temporarily acting as Chishi Protector General. But if all went according to the usual practice of the imperial court, as long as Wang Chong did not make any mistakes, once his martial arts improved, he would officially become Chishi Protector General. In the history of the Tang dynasty, there had never been a Protector General at such a young age. But the King of Song had also given Wang Chong a warning. The Chishi Protectorate was currently in chaos, and there were many factions. Moreover, after Wang Chong had toppled Fomin Linta, he had angered many people in the Chishi Protectorate. At the very least, the Hu would not submit to him, and many of them would probably view him as an enemy. This was also a problem that Wang Chong had to resolve. If he could not resolve this problem, Wang Chong's position as Chishi Protector General would be a flower in the mirror, a moon in the water. He would not be able to hold on for long. Thus, Wang Chong's position as Chishi Protector General was far from stable. However, the King of Song had already given a strong guarantee to the Holy Emperor that Wang Chong would definitely be able to resolve this problem. Thus, if Wang Chong made a mistake, the King of Song would definitely be drawn in as well. Your Highness is truly confident in me. This means that the position of Chishi Protector General must be mine. Wang Chong looked at the letter in his hand, his lips curling into a confident smile. Bastard! Wang Chong! How could it be that Wang Chong? Has the imperial court lost its mind? Even if they pulled a random person on the side of the road, they can't let that brat become our leader. Great General was framed and imprisoned by that fellow. And that bastard even wants to expel us. Who? Did he really think that we would forget so quickly? No, absolutely not. No matter what the imperial court says, I will never recognize him as Protector General. If everyone still remembers how well Protector General was protected, then stand with me. I don't believe that that bastard would dare to do anything to all of us. 200 to 300 li from Wuxiang, in the Chishi Protectorate headquarters, the news that the imperial court had appointed Wang Chong as Chishi Protector General was like poking a hornet's nest, causing the entire Chishi Protectorate headquarters to explode. Within the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, a large group of high-ranking Hu generals with hawk-like eyes, deep-nosed noses and thick beards had gathered to argue with one another. Even though they had all been fighting to the death over the position of Qixi Protector General, at least at this moment, they had all reached a consensus on how to deal with that Wang Chong of Wuxiang's City of Steel. Everyone listen up. I don't care what you think. The new Protector General can be you. It can be me. It can be any one of us, but it can't be a Han. The Qixi Protector General has to be a Hu. And this is a condition that all of us have to accept. So what if the Imperial Court has appointed that brat as Qixi Protector General? Don't forget, there's a saying that goes, "The heavens are high, the Emperor is far away." While the Qixi Protectorate headquarters was in an uproar, a muscular Hu with deep green eyes and a thick beard tinged with brown at the ends jumped onto an empty metal table. His face was fierce, like that of a savage beast that had starved for 10 days. Just his gaze was enough to make one's heart tremble. Chapter 840. Gujilai, what are you planning to do? Don't forget, that brat is a marquis of the Tang dynasty. Do you dare to act against him? A Hu general called out from the crowd. Haha, you might be afraid of him, but I'm not. Gujilai stood on the hollow metal table, his expression savage, and his eyes gleaming with a savage light. As long as you dare to follow me, I'll teach him a lesson. He's just a half-grown brat, and the hair on his mouth hasn't even grown out yet. Do you really want to listen to him? And don't forget, how did Lord Fomenlinta treat you in the past? Did he give you all any good missions? Now is the time to take revenge for Milord. Don't you want to take revenge for Milord? That's right. Milord's kindness to us is as heavy as a mountain. If we don't take revenge for Milord, won't we be the same as those cowardly Han? That's right. Take revenge for Milord. So what if the Imperial Court ordered it? We should submit a memorial to the Imperial Court and have them release Milord. At the mention of Great General Fomenlinta, everyone was instantly moved by Gujilai. Haha, good. As long as you follow me, let's not talk about killing him. At the very least, I'll make it so that he can no longer have a foothold in the Qixi Protectorate and Scram. In the territory of the Hu, we who should be the ones in charge. Gujilai saw that it was about time, and immediately began to encourage them. Good. Well said. In the territory of the Hu should be the ones in charge. Gujilai's words made the blood of the group of people boil. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire hall was filled with a thunderous roar, as if there was a landslide or a tsunami. Milord, what do we do? The cheers of the crowd rose from the hall, passing through the roof and spreading far, far away. Several hundred meters away from the Protectorate headquarters, several cavalrymen had gathered together. One of the young Hu turned his head and uneasily looked at the Hu general behind him. This is troublesome. Hibayi pretended not to hear, his eyes fixed on the distance. Gujilai was one of Fomenlinta's trusted aides, but he did not have any real power at first. However, with his identity as a trusted aide and his ability to motivate people, Gujilai's reputation in the Qixi Protectorate was even higher than that of the commander of the Uzun defense line. In addition, Gujilai's views were completely different from his. This was also the reason why he did not enter the hall. Wang Chong isn't as easy to deal with as you think. Hibayi recalled the scene of Wang Chong charging through the triangular gap, leading the 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry, and sweeping through everything before finally killing Dian Mangpoch. A chill ran through Hibayi's heart. That youth from the City of Steel's Tang dynasty was definitely the most frightening opponent on the battlefield. He would rather be his ally than his enemy. Let's go. Hibayi turned his horse around and quickly disappeared in the direction of the Uzun Highlands. Meanwhile, as carrier pigeons flew to the various borders, the news that Wang Chong had become the new Qixi Protector General began to spread. Unlike the complicated reactions in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, the news was much simpler in the various borders of the Tang dynasty. What? The City of Steel's Wang Chong has become Qixi Protector General? In the Anxi Protectorate headquarters, Gao Xianji's eyes widened in disbelief at this news. How could this be? How could those old officials of the court agree? Putting aside everything else, His martial arts aren't even at the peak of the Saint martial realm, and there are so many experienced generals in the army. Were they all rejected? The old officials of the court truly didn't agree, but the king of Song stood his ground and strongly recommended him. In addition, his martial arts truly aren't enough, so he's only temporarily acting protector general, not the true protector general. In addition, I've investigated. Feng Chongqing was standing not far from Gao Xianji. He looked up at his commander, hesitated for a moment, and then continued. After a moment of hesitation, he continued. Just before the imperial court's order, he ambushed the black wolf Yabgu at the Qixi armory and killed a good Elan, as well as the 5,000 Turkic elites a good Elan had brought with him. Buzz! Gao Xianji shivered at Feng Chongqing's words, but he quickly calmed down. Wang Chong had just killed the Uzun Brigadier General Dian Mengpoj at the Battle of the Triangular Gap, and annihilated the White Braves that had intimidated the western regions. In a little more than a month, Wang Chong had killed the Black Wolf Yabgu and a good Elan. In less than 2 months, 2 of the most famous generals of Qixi had died at Wang Chong's hands. At this moment, not even Gao Xianji could say anything. When the all is in the bag, it's obvious at the end. It seems like the light of the youngest son of the Wang clan can't be concealed. Gao Xianji sighed. At this moment, his heart was filled with emotions. He was not a Han, so his background was completely different from that of the other Han generals. From an ordinary infantry soldier to the current Anqi protector general, Gao Xianji had put in so much effort, so much blood, and so much effort, just to stand out among Fomin Linta's subordinates and escape his control. Gao Xianji had experienced countless dangers and barely escaped death. This was completely different from Wang Chong's meteoric rise, reaching the position of interim protector general in just a year. Even Gao Xianji had to admit that he was a little jealous, feeling like the new waves of the Yangtze River were replacing the old. But even so, Gao Xianji had to admit that Wang Chong's current accomplishments had not only been due to his birth and luck. The talent, and art of command that he had displayed in these past few battles had been transcendent and outstanding. Even an imperial great general like Gao Xianji had been stunned. Wang Chong's abilities truly had reached a level that far surpassed his peers. Even Go Xianji himself, at the age of 17, couldn't compare to Wang Chong. Not only that, my lord, if that Wang Chong becomes the acting Qixi protector general, many of our strategies will have to change. We can no longer simply suppress and resist. Qixi is responsible for transporting our supplies and soldiers, and in the future, we will need to make many requests of them, so we will have to interact with them. Feng Chongqing said, a hint of apprehension in his eyes. At the start, although Wang Chong was a member of a clan of ministers and generals, the grandson of Duke Jiao, the son of Heaven's disciple, and the young Marquis, this was still the western border, a place far away from the emperor. There were many things that Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing did not care about. But now that Wang Chong had become the acting Qixi protector general and seized control of the road to Qixi, everything had changed. They had to admit that the imperial court's order had truly caught them off guard. Neither of them had expected this. Gao Xianji said nothing, but his thick brows creased. It was clear that he was thinking the same thing as Feng Chongqing. But my lord does not need to worry too much. There are many who in Qixi, and the young Marquis still has a very long way to go before he can truly become protector general. Once he has overcome this trial, we can consider getting in touch with him. Feng Chongqing said, that's all we can do. Gao Xianji gave a long sigh. At the same time, in the distant Big Dipper city of Longxi, the news that Wang Chong had become Qixi protector general caused a stir that was no less shocking than the one in Anqi. A 17-year-old imperial protector general? How could there be such a thing? Not only was it approved by the imperial court, even His Majesty has permitted it. Geshu Han was in a state of shock as he held the news from the capital. Not even when the king of generals of the Uzun Empire, the White Lion Great General Witadra Konglo, had appeared had he been so shocked. That was because it was truly too surprising. He had been paying attention to the debate in the imperial court this entire time. So many officials had recommended so many experienced candidates for Qixi Protector General. But Geshu Han had never expected that the final result would be the unthinkable of the Northwest, Wang Chong. In truth, it wasn't just Geshu Han. All the officers of the Big Dipper army at his side were in a state of deep shock. When the news from the capital reached this place, it was like a bomb in the deep waters, giving everyone an unprecedented shock and shock. Unbelievable. In just 1 year, he became Qixi Protector General. There's also the Qixi Armory established by the imperial household in Qixi. Our Big Dipper Protectorate Army needs to go there every year to collect our armaments. In this way, our Big Dipper Army of Longxi will be under his control in the future. Did I hear it wrong? Protector General. With his current achievements, his name will probably be left in the annals of history, admired for thousands of years to come. But isn't he too young? Why did the imperial court approve it? This won't convince the masses. Convince the masses? Do you still think he's an ordinary young man? In the War of the Southwest, he killed more than 400,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army, and now he's killed Dian Mangpoj and a good Alan, and countless Uzun and Turkic warriors have been buried with them. He's a god of death. Do you think that the imperial court just casually recommended him? His current achievements aren't something that the imperial court can ignore just because it wants to. In the hall, every officer of the Big Dipper army was deeply stunned. When Wang Chong had first arrived in Wuxiang and begun to build the city of steel, everyone had treated him as an outsider. Even though he had made heaven-shaking contributions in the Southwest, in the eyes of everyone else, he was still a half-grown brat. A single success didn't prove anything. Sometimes it was luck, other times it was chance. It didn't mean that one's strength was extraordinary or outstanding. Perhaps it was just a flash in the pan. But no one had expected that Wang Chong would not only build the massive and majestic city of steel in Wuxiang, but he would also make great contributions, defeating the Uzun, defeating the Turks, killing important generals like Dian Mangpoj and a good Alan, and finally ascending to the position of Qixi Protector General. Chapter 841. My lord, then do we still need to continue dealing with Wang Chong? Qing Zhe has already contacted all the 240,000 bandits and highwaymen on the Silk Road. In addition, should we continue with the order forbidding Longxi's vegetable merchants, grain and fruits from selling to Wuxiang? A solemn voice suddenly interrupted the mood in the room. Next to Geshu Han, a burly bearded general with a beard of high status suddenly spoke up. When Wang Chong had just arrived in Wuxiang, Geshu Han had given him a test by ordering Qing Zhe to deal with Wang Chong, so that it would be difficult for Wang Chong to establish a foothold in Wuxiang. The most obvious and practical method was to forbid the sale of grain, vegetables, fruits, and all other necessities to Wuxiang. The closest Wuxiang could get supplies from the Central Plains was Longxi. Of all the riches in the world, none surpass Longxi. This was a saying that in the Central Plains, Longxi was the wealthiest. The land there was fertile and vast, making it the most convenient place to get supplies. In the capital, Wang Chong had promised that he would develop Wuxiang into a unique commercial hub on the Silk Road, a transit hub that would provide rest, supplies, and protection for the merchants traveling the Silk Road. If he wanted to provide for so many people and the daily needs of the garrison, there was no other place but Longxi. As for Qixi, one only needed to think about the meaning of the word qi. It was already quite impressive that such a barren land bordering the desert could provide for so many soldiers. It would be impossible for Wang Chong to obtain such a large amount of supplies from Qixi. When the time came, Wang Chong would have no choice but to get supplies from the capital. And the journey from the capital to Wuxiang was a long one. And with the 240,000 bandits and highwaymen on the way, one could easily imagine the result. But now that Wang Chong had been promoted to Qixi Protector General, everything was different. If Geshu Han dared to do this again, it would no longer be a minor test, but a direct declaration of war against Wang Chong. The empire's protector generals and great generals were all influential figures, and a battle between two protector generals was no trifling matter. Even Geshu Han had to seriously consider the pros and cons. Geshu Han said nothing. He raised his head and gazed at the blackened roof of Big Dipper City, a complicated look in his eyes. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains had been at peace for many years, and the power structure at the top level had already solidified. In Geshu Han's memories, the candidates for protector generals and great generals had already been solidified. However, Wang Cheng's appearance and his lightning-fast promotion completely broke this rule. In a sharp and incisive manner that caught everyone off guard and made them completely unaccustomed, he had swiftly moved from the southwest to the northwest, all the way to the position of Qixi Protector General. Geshu Han's life had been full of ups and downs, and he had weathered many storms and waves, but he had never encountered such a situation. Daluan Ruozen, Huashu Wazong, Duan Gichuan, Dusong Mangpoj Dian Mangpoj a good Alan. Although I still feel that the imperial court is lacking in consideration for promoting a 17-year-old protector general so quickly, he truly did rely on his own strength to reach his current position. Tell Qingzhe to withdraw. Those bandits and brigands have all been disbanded, and all the plans we've made have been cancelled. Times have changed, and we can't challenge another protector general. Geshu Han gave a long sigh. Yes, a Big Dipper officer quickly left with the order. Biting Anong. The news that Wang Cheng had been promoted to Qixi Protector General had sent shockwaves through the political circles of the empire. At the same time, in the distant Uzan Empire, the atmosphere was completely different from that of the Central Plains. The massive royal capital was deathly still. In the core of the royal palace, blue smoke rose up from a furnace, enveloping the main hall. However, no one spoke. Everyone's eyes were focused on a single place. It was a golden hollowed table that was around 4 feet tall. It was engraved with scriptures that exuded a mysterious aura. On the table, a black messenger pigeon with golden eyes was cawing, freely looking around as if it couldn't sense the tension in the hall at all. But everyone knew that the strange and oppressive atmosphere in the hall was because of the news this pigeon had brought not long ago. Your Majesty, although Fomin Linta has left, an even more formidable Wang Cheng has come, and he has even taken over Fomin Linta's position. I'm afraid that this is extremely disadvantageous to our Uzan Empire. A voice in the hall worriedly said. In the War of the Southwest, the destruction of Zhangzhung training camp, the miserable defeat at the Triangular Gap. If you add it all up, we've already lost more than 400,000 elite cavalry to this Tang dynasty youth. The plague on the plateau still hasn't been completely stopped, and the dead and wounded have piled up into mountains and seas. Now he's even become Qixi Protector General. He's truly a mortal malady to our Uzan Empire. And he's even built a city on our Uzan Plateau. This is something that has never happened before. Another voice added. In the past, the Uzan Empire feared Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Geshu Han, Fomin Linta, and Gao Xianji, the 4 great generals of the Tang dynasty. But now, another name had rapidly surpassed these 4, becoming the most dreaded existence in the Uzan Empire. This person was Wang Cheng. Although the Uzan Empire had lost in its wars with the Tang dynasty, even having its strongest great general of the Tang dynasty push his way all the way to the royal capital, those had been regular battles, and it was clear at a glance where they had lost and where they had been weak. No one had ever been like Wang Cheng, using the plague in addition to regular warfare. Moreover, his ability to command troops in close combat had far surpassed any of the famous generals of the Tang dynasty that the Uzan Empire had ever encountered. Not only that, in the Battle of Zhangzhung, Wang Cheng had managed to avoid all eyes and ears, traveling a great distance to appear in the heart of the Uzan Plateau, destroying the entire Zhangzhung training camp and the 8,000 Qinghai recruits in a single blow. This made the entire Uzan Empire uneasy, because there was no doubt that Wang Cheng had a secret passage that led directly to the heart of the Uzan Plateau. If they couldn't find this secret passage, it meant that Wang Cheng could avoid all eyes and ears at any time, enter the plateau from there at any time, and then leave as he pleased. This was equivalent to having a long knife pressed against your neck at any time, and you didn't even know where this knife was coming from, nor how to avoid it. Your Majesty, no matter what, we must find a way to get rid of this Wang Cheng. Otherwise, we won't just be like we are now, unable to enter and leave the northeast freely. I'm afraid that the entire northern border will be completely sealed off by him. Almost all the famous generals of the Uzun Empire in the hall were looking at the figure at the top of the hall. Up in the hall, the Tsempo didn't say anything. He just listened to the discussions of the officials in the hall, and his thick eyebrows furrowed tighter and tighter, his heart abnormally agitated. A great war, a great war. Get rid of Wang Chong. How could he not know that he should do everything he could to get rid of that youth from the Tang dynasty? But Daluan Ruozan had failed. Huashu Wazong had failed, Dian Pujiel had failed, Dian Mangpoch had failed, and Dusong Mangpoch had also failed. 3 of the empire's most formidable great generals and prime minister had lost to Wang Chong, and they had even lost the more than 200,000 soldiers that the Ngari royal lineage had accumulated over 10-some years, as well as countless cows and sheep. That boy from the Tang dynasty was still alive, but the Uzun Empire was on the verge of collapsing from the losses it had suffered. Enough! Suddenly, a voice resounded through the hall. This voice was not harsh, but abnormally mellow. But the entire hall was deathly still, everyone keeping their mouths shut. Pass on my order to all the armies to stay far away from the northern border. No more battles are allowed in the northern border. This voice was neither loud nor soft, and it was tinged with an order. In all of the Uzun Empire, only the Prime Minister Dalan Trinling could interject in front of the Tsempo and issue such an order. As expected, the moment Dalan Trinling spoke, all the officials and generals in the hall became submissive, all their viciousness vanishing without a trace. Even the Tsempo appeared much more relaxed. The empire has already lost enough soldiers in the northern border. Even Dian Mangpoch died there, and Dusong Mangpoch returned with heavy injuries. It's no longer suitable for another battle in the short term. Does Dusong clan head, Dusong Mangpoch, know where he is? In addition, how are his injuries? Dalan Trinling held his hands behind his back, his narrow eyes suffused with intelligence, as he turned his head to a tall and muscular figure in the hall. Many thanks for Prime Minister's concern. Ever since Mangpoch returned from the last battle, he went to the Great Snow Mountain Temple, and has been kneeling there for a long time. Even now, he still has not returned, nor has he contacted us. Dusong Gongjue bowed. The Dusong clan and the Dian clan were 2 extremely ancient clans that had been passed down through the generations of the Uzun Empire. Dusong Gongjue was the current head of the Dusong clan. Dusong Mangpoch was known as the Eagle of the Dusong clan, the most outstanding individual of his generation, and also a great general of the Uzun Empire. When Dusong Gongjue heard that Dusong Mangpoch had abandoned his army and fled at the Triangular Gap, he had felt ashamed and humiliated. But when he saw Dusong Mangpoch's horrifying wounds on his return, Dusong Gongjue couldn't even bring himself to say a single word of rebuke. It was obvious that Dusong Mangpoch had been through unimaginable dangers. If he had not reacted quickly and escaped, it would not have been just the tens of thousands of soldiers who would have died at the Triangular Gap. Even Dusong Mangpoch, the most outstanding representative of the Dusong clan, a great general of the Uzun Empire, would have died at the Triangular Gap. That was something that the Dusong clan would find hard to endure. At the very least, Dusong Mangpoch had survived. This was the most important thing. I understand. Dalan Trinling nodded. His face was devoid of emotion, but there was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. Tens of thousands of elites had died at the Triangular Gap, and even the Dian clan's Dian Mangpoch had died there. Right now, the one blaming himself the most was probably Dusong Mangpoch. This was also why he had gone to the Great Snow Mountain Temple the moment he had returned, and knelt there for a long time. Alas, Dusong Mangpoch would find it very difficult to fulfill his wish. Walala. Chapter 842. Dalan Trinling raised his head, and saw a royal capital guard extending his arm. Perched on this arm was a muscular and graceful golden-eyed bird of prey, brimming with power. This bird was completely different from the birds of the Uzun, the Tang dynasty, and the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates. In the entire continent, there was only one place that produced such birds. This was an Arabian hunting falcon. In a flash, all the officials in the hall paled. Prime Minister, The Arabs of the West have sent a letter. The tall royal capital guard strode in with the bird in his hands, but before he could finish speaking, he saw Prime Minister Dalen Trinling raise his wrist. A finger-thick bolt of stellar energy shot out of his finger, pulverizing the Arabian hunting falcon, along with the letter on its ankle. All its flesh and feathers were reduced to a mist of blood and dust. The guards of the capital stood dumbfounded in front of the gate, their faces filled with shock, and for a moment, they couldn't say a word. "I understand. You can withdraw." Dalen Trinling waved his hand and indifferently said. As he spoke, he withdrew his finger back into his sleeve. Not a single one of the officials in the hall felt that Dalen Trinling's actions had been excessive. Long before the Tang dynasty had penetrated deep into the western regions, the Uzan and the Arabian Empire had clashed many times over the territory of the western regions. Both sides had suffered grievous casualties, each with victories and defeats, and this state of affairs had persisted for more than 1,000 years. Although the two sides would occasionally cooperate, they were mostly competitors. They could be described as mortal enemies of the western regions. Not too long ago, the Arabian Empire had used the War of the Southwest and the defeat of the Ngari royal lineage to attack the Uzan Empire in Sindhu, seizing away all the recipes and results of the giant army. The only bit of cooperation between the two sides had been completely shattered. In the current Uzan Empire, the Arabian Empire was a taboo. Yes, yes. When the royal capital guard saw that the speaker was Dalen Trinling, a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. He bowed and quickly left. "All right, let's not talk about this for now. Zhenju, I asked you to solve the sheep plague last time. How is it going?" Dalen Trinling said. "Prime Minister, according to your instructions, we successfully followed the map and found the formula to cure the sheep plague from a teacher in Longxi. The scout has successfully brought back the formula." "Your Highness," one of the Uzan ministers said. "Very good. Compared to the war in the north, this matter is the most important. Let's solve the sheep plague as soon as possible." Dalen Trinling indifferently said. "Yes, Prime Minister." "Who?" The cold wind whistled as it blew down from the sky, sweeping up a snowy mist. More than 2,000 kilometers away from the capital, in a place where few people tread, a huge mountain stood tall. This mountain range stretched on for hundreds of kilometers, and it was as if it had been chiseled by a knife and chiseled by a hatchet. It stretched all the way up, and the highest peak was several thousand meters tall, piercing straight into the depths of the sky. The highest part of the mountain was covered in pure white snow. From a distance, the entire mountain range seemed majestic and awe-inspiring. This was the holy land of the Uzan, the Great Snow Mountain Temple, the source of all the legends of the Uzan. Although the Uzan Empire was still far from entering the winter season, the peak of the Great Snow Mountain was covered in snow all year round, regardless of whether it was spring, summer, autumn, or winter. This was a phenomenon unique to the entire Great Snow Mountain. At this moment, a figure 7 feet tall was kneeling at the base of the mountain, his head pressed to the ground, his body motionless. His armor was in tatters, and many parts of his body were stained black and red with blood. It was clear that he had experienced a hair-raising and perilous battle. This figure had appeared here a month ago, and no matter how the wind blew, how the sun shone, or how the rain drenched him, he had remained unshaken, like the most pious and lowly of believers. If one did not know, they would find it very difficult to believe that this disheveled and filthy figure dressed in tattered armor was the illustrious Imperial Great General Dusong Mangpoj of the Uzan Empire. "My lord, you should leave. The venerable monk will not agree to your request. The Great Snow Mountain Temple has never interfered in secular wars for several thousand years, and it is even less likely to do so now." After some time, a voice rang out in front of Dusong Mangpoj. A barefooted, bareheaded monk dressed in a single robe walked down from above, his hands pressed together in prayer. Even someone of Dusong Mangpoj's cultivation had failed to hear his footsteps. His eyes were gentle and calm like a bottomless lake, capable of soothing all the distracting thoughts in one's mind. "This matter is different. This is not a secular war. The people who defeated me are all experts of the Central Plains. Only the people of the Great Snow Mountain Temple can deal with these people. I hope that Venerable can inform the Venerable Monk and assist me." Dusong Mangpoj continued to kneel on the ground, his head even lower as he respectfully spoke. "Oh." The monk's calm eyes finally rippled for a moment, but they quickly regained their composure. "It's useless. The Venerable Monk will not easily make an exception. My lord, please return. No matter how long you kneel here, it's useless." With these words, the monk quickly turned around and began to make his way up the mountain. In just a few moments, he had vanished from sight. Dusong Mangpoj found it difficult to conceal the fear in his eyes, but even so, he showed no intention of leaving. He continued to kneel on the ground, as if he had been petrified. Time slowly passed, the sun rising and the moon setting day after day. After some time, he heard another set of footsteps. "Venerable, don't try to persuade me. I will not leave," Dusong Mangpoj said without raising his head. "I'm no venerable, but I truly have come to persuade you to leave." A vigorous and energetic voice resounded in Dusong Mangpoj's ears, causing him to raise his head in shock. He saw an imperial great general wearing fiery red armor and a long saber at his waist, standing in front of him like a god. His body was exuding wave after wave of powerful energy, a storm that was suffocating. Huashuwazong. Dusong Mangpoj was flabbergasted. He had never imagined that a great general of the Ngari royal lineage would appear here. "It's useless. The Great Snow Mountain Temple will not act. If you want to kneel until the Venerable Monk appears, not even I can help you. But if you just want to deal with that Wang Chong of the Tang dynasty, I might know of a method that can help you." Huashuwazong looked at Dusong Mangpoj and said, "That's right. I forgot to tell you that the young Marquis of Wuxiang has already been promoted to Chishi Protector General, replacing Fomin Linta." "What?" Dusong Mangpoj's body trembled, a look of shock on his face. "Do you understand now? When he only had 5,000 soldiers, he was already able to defeat you and Dian Mangpoj. Now that he's promoted to Chishi Protector General, you can imagine what that will mean for our Uzan Empire. Based on what I know, he's still building more cities in the Triangular Gap. In the future, it won't just be us who will lose Chishi and the western regions, the entrance to the Tang dynasty. Moreover, even our own territory will be invaded by the Tang dynasty." Huashuwazong indifferently said. Dusong Mangpoj had arrived a month ago, so he had no idea what was going on in the outside world. But Huashuwazong had come prepared, so he was well aware of all that was going to happen. "You can choose to continue kneeling here, or leave with me to meet someone. Together, we can deal with that young Marquis of the Tang dynasty. Trust me, only that person can help you deal with that Wang Chong," Huashuwazong said. "Who? You'll know when the time comes." Dusong Mangpoj said nothing, only raised his head to the majestic mountain range before him. Following Dusong Mangpoj's line of sight, one could see that halfway up the mountain were ancient temples with yellow walls, arranged in picturesque disorder. They were interspersed with each other, forming a ribbon that extended toward the snow-capped summit. And at the very top of the mountain, above all the other temples, stood a small red temple. Although it was as small as a sesame seed from a distance, it exuded a majestic and ancient aura. It was like the center of the universe, cold, transcendent, and divine as it looked down on the world. This was the most ancient and sacred place of the plateau, the true Great Snow Mountain Temple. "Ha!" Dusong Mangpoj gave a deep sigh and finally stood up. Perhaps it was just as that Grandmaster had said. The Holy Land had always been aloof from the world, never involving itself in the affairs of the mundane world. No matter how long he knelt here, the Holy Land would not move. Compared to the vague hope of moving against the Holy Land, it was more practical to rely on Huashuwazong, who was also a great general. "Let's go." Dusong Mangpoj finally turned his head to Huashuwazong. At that moment, a rare smile appeared on Huashuwazong's lips. "You won't regret it." Turning around, the two of them walked out side by side. But as the two left the base of the mountain and passed by an ancient tree that had grown for more than 1,000 years, a calm and lofty voice came from behind them. "Great General," the voice rumbled like thunder. "This is what the Venerable Master wanted me to give to you." "Bzz." The two turned their heads, and under the flabbergasted gazes of the crowd, they saw a black dot grow larger as it was thrown down from the highest point of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. It landed with a thump on the ground not far from the pair. Looking closely, one could see that it was a wooden box about a foot long, wrapped in a yellowish-brown cloth that was trembling in the wind. The Holy Land will not move, nor will it kill, and the Venerable Master will not leave the Divine Temple for your sake. But even so, the Holy Land is not incapable of helping you. This box contains a ritual tool of the Divine Temple. As long as you use it, no matter how powerful your opponent is, they will be trapped inside, unable to move. Take it. This should be able to help you. The lingering sound lingered in the air. This time, not just Dusong Mangpoj, but even Huashu Wuzong was pleasantly surprised. The ritual tools of the Divine Temple had always been rumored to exist, never seen. Huashu Wuzong had come to the Divine Temple many times and cultivated here for so long, but he had never seen one. He had not expected that Dusong Mangpoj's month of kneeling had moved the Divine Temple to grant him a ritual tool. Many thanks, Venerable Master. Dusong Mangpoj was overjoyed. Picking up the box, the two quickly left. Chapter 843. As Dusong Mangpoj and Huashu Wuzong left the Great Snow Mountain Temple, in the distant city of steel of Wuxiang, a completely different scene was taking place. As the news that Wang Chong had been promoted to Qixi Protector General spread, the entire city of steel was in a jubilant mood. Their lord had become Protector General, squeezing his way into the ranks of the most powerful and influential personages. What news could be more inspiring than this? To reach this position in a little more than a year was like the morning sun bursting forth from the horizon. If one followed such a lord, their future prospects would be limitless. Everyone seemed to have been injected with adrenaline, madly cultivating and training to raise their strength. The entire city of steel was brimming with energy and vigor. But unlike the atmosphere outside, the situation in Wang Chong's residence was completely different. All the tables, chairs, and stools in this spacious room had been moved away, and in the very center of the room was a massive sand table of the western regions. The sand table depicted the rise and fall of the mountains, and all the kingdoms of the western regions, the Tang dynasty's Anxi Protectorate, the Uzan Plateau to the west, the Turkic steppe to the east, Qixi, and Wuxiang all appeared on the table. While dealing with the Uzan Empire and the Western Turkic Khaganate, Wang Chong had not been idle when it came to other aspects of the western regions. A large number of scouts were sent out to collect information about various regions and forces, as well as the geographical terrain. Hundreds of the most elite scouts in the army spent several months to condense this huge western region sand table, which was of great strategic value. As for the Uzan Empire, I've already killed Dian Mangpoj, Dusong Mangpoj has been injured, and the White Braves are basically gone. In addition, nearly 100,000 of their elite soldiers have died in battle. Coupled with the plague that we spread in the southwest, the Uzan Empire has been greatly weakened and won't have the strength to threaten us for the time being. In addition, the Western Turkic Khaganate has attacked us the most frequently, and their most representative is the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudalan. Agudalan had died by the side of the Qixi armory, and more than 4,000 of his elite Turkic soldiers had been buried with him. With these people dead, the biggest threat to us will be gone. It would be very difficult for the Western Turkic Khaganate to produce another person as formidable and difficult to deal with as Agudalan. Now that these two important figures are dead, Qixi has basically nothing to worry about. Wang Chong extended a finger and pointed at the Uzan Empire and Western Turkic Khaganate on the model. Gathered around him were all the generals of the city of steel: Li Sai, Huang Batian, Su Yiqin Suqi, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Chen Bin, and even Zhang Shouji. All of them were focused on Wang Chong's explanation. So my lord means that where should our next target be? Suqi suddenly said. Should we penetrate into the Uzan Empire and the Turkic steppe and launch a counterattack, so that they lose the ability to attack the Tang dynasty? Everyone's eyes brightened at Suqi's words. Of all the protector generals and great generals of the Tang dynasty, No one had been more proactive than Wang Chong. All the famed generals of the Tang dynasty, including Geshu Han, and Sis Hun, Zhang Shogui and Fomin Linta, had adopted a passive strategy of defense, occasionally taking the initiative to attack. Very few of them were like Wang Chong, penetrating deep into the heart of the enemy and fighting there, establishing bases and cities so that they could remain there forever. This made the enemy feel like a fishbone was stuck in their throats, and a dagger was placed on their backs. In this aspect, not even Gao Xianji could compare to Wang Chong. The Uzun Empire and the Turkic Khaganate naturally have to be dealt with, but the greatest threat to us is not them, but somewhere else. Wang Chong drew back his finger and swept his gaze over the crowd. The crowd was flabbergasted by Wang Chong's words, glancing at each other in dismay. The greatest threats around Wuxiang and Qixi were the Uzun Empire and the Turkic Khaganate. They truly could not think of any other threat besides these two empires. "My lord, are you talking about the Hu of the Qixi Protectorate?" At the very back of the crowd, Chunbin seemed to suddenly think of something and hesitantly asked. "Of course not. They don't have the right." Wang Chong grinned and did not keep them in suspense. Taking a small red flag from the side of the model, he sent it over Wuxiang, Qixi, Anxi, and the Tsong Mountains, finally landing on the farthest point on the western border, near the sea. "Our true enemy is here. Inside. The Arabian Empire? How could it be them? That's just a country the size of a sesame seed. What threat could it possibly pose to us?" "That's right. They probably can't even compare to Mengshi Zhao. So how could they possibly be stronger than Uzun? And don't we still have the Anxi Protectorate Army, and Gao Xianji on the other side of Anxi? With them there, what country could possibly threaten us?" "Marquis, did you point to the wrong place? I've seen those Arabs in the capital before. All of them are plump and round, and when they smile, their eyelids go up so that you can't even see their eyes. Even if there were 80,000 of them, we would still be able to easily defeat them. How could they possibly threaten us?" As Wang Chong placed his red flag down, everyone in the room was flabbergasted. No one had expected that the threat Wang Chong was referring to was this place that was so distant from the Tang dynasty. Many of them began to wonder if Wang Chong had placed his flag in the wrong place. As Wang Chong listened to the cries of alarm in the room, he said nothing, only faintly smiled. When he had first arrived in Wuxiang, everyone had believed that his goal was to establish a commercial city and earn a great deal of gold and silver, or perhaps to push back the forces of Uzun and the Western Turkic Khaganate. But Wang Chong's goal had never been the Uzun Empire, much less the Western Turkic Khaganate. At this point, Wang Chong no longer needed to hide anything. From start to finish, he had only had one enemy, that vast empire to the west of the Tsong Mountains, Arabia. It was the only existence on this continent that could stand up to the Tang dynasty, and was still actively expanding and expanding. Everyone believed that the Arabian Empire was a small country on the same level as Goguryeo or Mengshi Zhao, but Wang Chong knew that the true Arabia had even more territory and more population than the Tang dynasty. Moreover, it ruled over many small countries and had countless famous generals. Moreover, unlike the Tang dynasty, which was currently indulging in peace and pleasure, Arabia was an empire that worshipped courage in battle. Their history was one of constant war and expansion. The Tang dynasty had far too little understanding of the countries outside the Central Plains. The people of the Central Plains had always longed for their homeland and were unwilling to even glance at the outside world. Su Kai, Chung Sanyuan, and the others had been with him for a very long time, but even they viewed Arabia with such contempt and disdain, let alone the others. While everyone was focused on Uzun and the Eastern and Western Turks, none of them knew that this puny little country was already preparing its troops and targeting the Tang dynasty. Moreover, if they were allowed to succeed, they would completely change the fate of the Central Divine Prefecture, plunging this enormous empire into endless internal strife. This was something that Wang Chong could not tolerate. What Wang Chong needed to do was strike a vicious blow at the empire on the western border, when it stretched out its claws, making it feel the power of the empire of the east. Zhang Ke, Show everyone the intelligence report Yang Hongchang has gathered. Wang Chong indifferently said to the people in the room. Yes, Marquis. A young voice spoke from behind Wang Chong. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Ke strode over with a thick stack of documents and began to distribute them to everyone. Everyone was bewildered and subconsciously took the documents. Open them and take a look, Wang Chong indifferently said, offering no explanation. Everyone was puzzled and subconsciously flipped it open. At first glance, everyone's pupils shrank, and the original noise instantly disappeared without a trace. As time passed, the mood in the room slowly grew heavy. Arabia? How could this be? How could they have such a vast territory, comparable to the Tang dynasty? How could they have so many people? Aren't they just a small country? And they have so many soldiers. How could this be? How could there be such a massive country to the west of the Tsong Mountains? Too powerful. They even defeated the Uzun Empire many times, using a small number of soldiers to suppress the Uzun Empire's strongest Yarlung royal lineage. Everyone in the room was stunned by the information Zhang Ke had handed over. This was a completely different Arabia from what they had imagined, and none of them could believe their eyes as they stared at the Arabia in the report. They finally understood why Wang Chong had said that the greatest threat to the Tang dynasty was the Arabian Empire. All of you have only seen the most superficial information. The true Arabia is far more powerful than what is recorded in the documents. Wang Chong indifferently said to the crowd. With just one sentence, all the voices in the hall immediately disappeared without a trace. Everyone turned to Wang Chong. Zhang Ke, you can speak next. Wang Chong did not continue, instead shooting a glance at Zhang Quebec. Yes, Marquis. Zhang Ke bowed and quickly turned to face the crowd. This information was first gathered by Marquis from a great clan in the western regions that he was working with. That clan had been doing business in Arabia for many years and had some understanding of the region. However, the Arabs are very wary of outsiders, making it very difficult for us to gather the most comprehensive information. It was already quite difficult to gather this information, and we even lost quite a few scouts. The true Arabian Empire can only be stronger than what we know. In addition, not too long ago, I was ordered to follow a group of merchants to Arabia. But I didn't get very far before the Arabs discovered Little Shah. The birds raised by the army are extremely formidable, and even Little Shah was injured. They even sent cavalry to pursue me, forcing me to retreat. As Zhang Ke spoke, he raised his arm, bringing the rock eagle on his shoulder before everyone's eyes. In that moment, everyone could clearly see that the rock eagle's legs, head, and body were covered in deep claw marks, some of which were so deep that bone could be seen. All of them couldn't help but take in a deep breath. They had all seen how powerful Zhang Ke's rock eagle was. In all of Qixi, perhaps even in the western regions, there were no birds that could compare to it. Even the birds raised by Uzun and the Western Turks had been forced to flee in panic. It could be said that this rock eagle was the king of eagles. Chapter 844. Could the Arabs really be this formidable? Cheng Sanyuan muttered to himself in shock. The true Arabs are even more formidable than what you see. At this moment, Wang Chong finally spoke. On the Arabian side of Anxi, there is a place called Samarkand. 200,000 Arab soldiers have gathered there, all of them the most formidable cavalry. You should have seen the war horses of Uzun and the Turks. The Arab war horses are taller, more muscular, more capable of charging, and more powerful. Not only that, although the majority of the Arab merchants you've seen are chubby and lacking in fighting ability, the true Arabs, because of their environment, are tall and muscular. They are natural-born warriors. Thus, if a war breaks out, the Arabs can gather a massive army from the common people without any training, rapidly expanding to more than 400,000 soldiers, all of them comparable to regular armies. But this is only the army on the far eastern side of the Arabian Empire, not the entirety of the empire. Once all of them are mobilized, the number of soldiers the Arabs can muster is unimaginable. The room was quiet, as everyone listened to Wang Chong's words in shock. This was their first time truly encountering the Arabian Empire, and at this moment, All of them felt an intense sense of danger. But you were right about one thing. At the beginning, the Arabian Empire truly was a small country, no larger than the Goguryeo Empire. The reason they were able to develop to such an enormous size, even surpassing the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, was because they trained their soldiers for many years and fought against foreign invaders, ultimately expanding to their current size. You've all seen Dayan Mangpoch's White Braves and know how formidable they are. And the Arabs have a Mamluk army, an army even stronger than Uzun's White Braves. All the soldiers there are trained from the age of 7 or 8. At the very beginning, they kill each other, with only the fiercest and most murderous of children surviving. From childhood to adulthood, they undergo the harshest military training, maturing amidst the blood and swords of actual combat. Finally, they become true soldiers of the Mamluk army. And at that time, every one of them was the most lethal weapon, possessing the most abundant killing and combat experience. Wang Chang's voice echoed throughout the room. For everyone, this was a baptism. This was precisely Wang Chang's goal. If not even the people closest to him could correctly understand Arabia's strength, how could he possibly defeat it? Change happened bit by bit. The Tang dynasty could no longer indulge in the Middle Earth and its surroundings. It needed to truly raise its head and look at the world correctly, to see the true appearance of the world. And this change would begin with the people closest to him. In the future, if every Tang people stopped being obsessed with what was in front of them and were reluctant to leave their homeland and open their eyes to look at the real world, it would be a completely different Tang dynasty. Marquis, if every Arab is as formidable as you say, how can we fight against them? Can we still defeat them? A voice suddenly interjected. Cheng Sanyuan stared in shock at his marquis. Wang Chang's words today had completely changed his impression of that distant country. Cheng Sanyuan, I've never seen a true Arab warrior, nor do I know what you mean by victory, but the Tang dynasty did not reach its current height through luck. Goguryeo, Mengshi Zhao, Uzun, the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, and the kingdoms of the western regions. Even if all of these countries joined together, they would not dare to recklessly talk about a war with the Tang dynasty. Only the Tang dynasty could use the power of a single country to suppress all the surrounding countries and make them all bow their heads in submission. Arabia might be very strong, but the Tang dynasty is not weak. If the Arabs dare to covet the Central Plains, they will experience the true power of the Tang dynasty for the rest of their lives, and they will never forget it. Li Sai suddenly opened his mouth. His expression was solemn, and his words were powerful and resonant. That's right. A knowing smile appeared on Wang Chang's face at Li Sai's words. Arabia truly is strong, but our Tang dynasty is not weak either. The Arab cavalry is very formidable, but their ballistae and weapons are far inferior to ours. Our Tang dynasty's ballistae are unparalleled in the world. No cavalry, no matter how thick their armor, cannot stop the piercing power of a ballista bolt. Moreover, in terms of infantry formations and fighting power, as well as strategy, the Arabs are far inferior to the Tang dynasty. They do not have formations, only simple formations, much less any strategy. Wang Chong was not exaggerating in the slightest. The military strategies of the Tang dynasty and the Central Plains had been accumulated over a long period of time through frequent confrontations and wars. In this aspect, the Arabs did not possess. Everyone nodded at Wang Chong's words, their spirits roused. Indeed, the Arabs might be a giant crocodile, but the Tang dynasty was no sheep, but a mighty lion. Who was stronger, and who was weaker would only be known after the final battle. Marquis, what do you need us to do? No matter what, as long as we can help the Tang dynasty deal with the Arabs, even if we have to climb a mountain of daggers or enter a sea of flames, we will do our best. That's right. Those who offend my Tang dynasty will be executed no matter how far away they are. Marquis, please give us your orders. Everyone excitedly said. In the face of a foreign enemy, all of them were one. Whether they admitted it or not, the glory and responsibility of being part of the Tang people had seeped into their very bones. Wang Chong gave a slight nod of approval at this sight. No matter what the situation was like elsewhere, As long as everyone at his side was of one mind and united as one, Wang Chong was confident that he could accomplish anything. One mountain cannot hold two tigers, and the Arabs are warlike by nature. Given their style, a war with the Tang dynasty is certain to occur in the future. Although we have no way of knowing when the war will begin, we can begin to make preparations. Suki. As he spoke, Wang Chong turned his head to the right. Your subordinate is here. Suki hurriedly lowered his head and bowed. Starting from now, I need you to shift your focus. Select as many elite scouts from the army as possible, have them learn Arabic, and then send them to the Arabian Empire as quickly as possible. In addition, the Arabs are very xenophobic, so they cannot use us Han. They must recruit Hu or other merchants from the western regions. I need you to use these people to gather as much intelligence on the Arabian Empire as possible. Wang Chong said, Your subordinate understands. Suki immediately replied, Chen Bin. Your subordinate is here. Chen Bin stepped forward. The cement road formula is ready. I need you to contact Zhao Jingdian in the capital and have him mobilize the strength of the great clans to build a cement road from Wuxiang to the Anxi Protectorate as quickly as possible. In addition, inform Zhao Jingdian that I need him to build a cement road as quickly as possible to connect Wuxiang to the capital. Wang Chong sternly said, Yes. Chen Bin quickly bowed. Su Shixian. Your subordinate is here. Su Shixian hurriedly stepped forward. As the new Qixi Protector General and Lord of Wuxiang, write a memorial to the Imperial Court. Ask the Imperial Court to reinforce Qixi. Say that Qixi suffered grievous losses in the last war. In addition, ask the Imperial Court to use Wuxiang's City of Steel as a transit point for soldiers. Say that we can take some of the logistical pressure on the Imperial Court. Wang Chong said, a look of awe on his face. He had been thinking about this problem for a very long time. In order to reinforce the Anxi Protectorate army, Qixi alone was not enough. The Imperial Court also had to obtain soldiers from other places. If the City of Steel could be used as a reservoir of soldiers, the number of soldiers that could be deployed would be greatly increased. And the Imperial Court would be happy to have someone else share the logistical pressure and lessen its burden. Yes, your subordinate understands. Su Shixian bowed. In addition, send a letter to the capital and have Wen Shuyang come. Yes. Wang Chong issued one order after another, and soon, each of them had their own mission. The resources and abilities of the City of Steel were slowly being directed toward Talas and the Arabian Empire. If one said that Yang Hongchang had been the one to gather information on Talas, then now, with the influx of scouts and soldiers, Wang Chong's ability to gather information on Talas and the Arabian Empire had skyrocketed. That's right, what about Hilayeg? Once everything was over, Wang Chong suddenly thought of Hilayeg and asked. In the past, Hilayeg would always be at his beck and call like a shadow, but it had been a very long time since Wang Chong had seen him. Haha, didn't you leave the matter of the Turkic fourth prince to him? Right now, he's completely devoted to this task. In order to better accomplish this task, he's already moved from the residence you arranged for him to the City of Steel's prison. Su Yiqing gracefully strode forward, a charming smile on her face and a spirited expression. She exuded a dazzling charm that even Wang Chong couldn't help but be dazed for a moment. But Wang Chong quickly recovered. The prison? Why would he go there? Wang Chong couldn't help but ask in surprise. Based on his understanding of Hilayeg, he knew that this fellow was an extreme hedonist. He had been very picky about the rooms that had been arranged for him, and he had even bought a lot of tiger pelts to decorate the walls and floor. How could he possibly be willing to go to the prison? This was completely out of line with his style. Just what is he doing? What can he do? It's all for the fourth prince. Su Yiqing laughed even harder at these words, almost unable to restrain her laughter. Now, in order to win the trust of the fourth prince and change his impression of him, he's actually resorted to the tactic of injuring himself to gain the trust of the fourth prince. He had Suki find someone to give him a vicious beating him black and blue, and then throwing him into the prison to be locked up with the fourth prince every day. If my guess is right, this damn fatty is probably complaining to that fourth prince in the prison. Chapter 845. What? Wang Chong was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his ears. Hulieg's actions were simply too shocking. Not even Wang Chong had expected him to use this sort of move. But will this move of his really be useful? Hulieg's residence had been personally raided by the fourth prince, and before the Battle of Chishi Armory, this fourth prince had followed the Blue Wolf Protector General Agudalan for a long time, listening to the latter's orders every day. His impression of Hulieg was definitely not very good. In normal circumstances, it would already be quite good if he hadn't lunged at this traitor and taken a bite out of Hulieg. It was almost impossible for Hulieg to change his impression of him. Why else would he use the ruse of self-injury? Suki was really beating him, not holding back at all. As for Hulieg, he was lying on the ground, his face ashen and his forehead drenched in sweat as he begged Suki to beat him even harder. I have to say that this Turkic horse merchant truly does have some ability. The Turkic fourth prince was imprisoned with him for several days. Every day, the Turkic fourth prince would hear the Turkic fourth prince ramble on about how he was only doing business with us. Moreover, in order to save him, the Turkic fourth prince had been ruthlessly beaten. Su Yiqing covered her mouth with a smile. Oh, if that's really the case, then this fellow is truly worthy of respect. It seems like he's going all out to return to the Turkic steppe. As he listened to Su Yiqing's bell-like laughter, a hint of a smile appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. Forget it. Let him handle this matter. At the same time, on the distant Mount Sami, where the tent of the Western Turkic Khaganate was located, a furious roar shook the heavens. What? They actually refused us again. Did they really think that our Western Turks would agree to such an impossible condition? Ishbara Khagan paced back and forth in the enormous golden tent like an enraged lion. All of Mount Sami trembled at his roars. Khagan, we've already asked again and again, but the other party insists on 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses and refuses to relent. He also said that if we don't agree, he'll send the fourth prince's corpse to Mount Sami. In the tent, a scout knelt on the ground, trembling with fear. His head was almost buried between his thighs, and he didn't even dare to raise his head to take a look. Bastard! Then let them deliver the fourth prince's corpse. Tell them that 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses is impossible. Ishbara Khagan was furious. His furious voice was like a clap of thunder that flashed through the sky above Mount Sami, causing the minds of everyone who heard it to tremble in fear. The scout prostrated on the ground, not daring to say a word. Hurry up and go. Ishbara Khan's eyes widened as he shouted angrily. Yes. Trembling all over, the scout turned and left, not daring to say another word. However, just as the scout reached the exit of the tent, boom, the earth shook and black gas filled the air. An invisible black wall suddenly descended from the sky, enveloping the entire tent. The Turkic scout was caught off guard and slammed into the black wall of energy, his body staggering and almost falling to the ground. Paying respects to Lord Priest. But this had happened so suddenly that the Turkic scout did not immediately stand up. Instead, he prostrated on the ground, his head even lower in panic. In the tent, the furious Ishbara Khagan inhaled sharply the moment the black wall appeared. His expression became much more sober. The entire tent was silent. Blackwater Shaman, Ishbara Khagan suddenly called out as he glanced outside the tent. Khagan, quell your anger. The matter of the fourth prince must be considered at length. Do not let your emotions affect your decisions. At the exit of the tent, light and shadow changed. With a hoarse and old voice, a figure about 5 feet tall with a hunched back slowly walked in from outside the tent. His black robe reached the ground, and he was holding a black skull staff. At that moment, shadows began to flicker in the tent, with the black-robed figure at the center. Countless savage images of beasts surged out of the black-robed figure's body like streams of light. Not only that, the moment the black-robed figure appeared, the golden tent began to emit a strange odor. It smelled like a bear, but also like a tiger. In short, it felt like a herd of animals had surged into the tent. In the entire Western Turkic Khaganate, there was only one special existence that could give off this sort of feeling and charge into Ishbara Khagan's tent: the shaman priests. No one knew how the shaman priests had come to be, only that they had appeared in the history of the Turkic steppe ever since the birth of the Turkic people, and they possessed an extremely lofty status. The legends said that the shaman priests could communicate with all animals and the gods in the heavens. They knew the past and could also see the future. Their bodies were shrouded in a dense fog, concealing countless secrets. Moreover, all the shaman priests possessed a mysterious power that could not be explained with common sense. This power was not martial arts, but it was even more terrifying and mysterious. The people of the steppe called it sorcery. The most famous legend of the shaman priests was that more than 1,000 years ago, during the reign of the strongest emperor of the Central Plains, Emperor Wu of Han, powerful cavalry from the Central Plains had swept through the steppe and desert, repeatedly driving back the elite cavalry of the Turks. The Turkic steppe had been covered in corpses and rivers of blood. At the height of its power, and at its peak, the Turkic Empire had encountered one of the most unyielding emperors of the Central Plains, and after a series of wars, it had rapidly declined and become extremely weak. This was something that had never happened on the steppe before. And in the final battle, Emperor Wu of Han of the Central Plains sent his last powerful cavalry on a northern expedition against the Turks, intending to exterminate the Turks and put an end to any future troubles. At that time, all the people of the steppe were trembling in fear and apprehension, feeling that a great calamity was about to befall them. At that time, the strongest shaman of the Turkic steppe had led several hundred shaman priests on the path the army of the Central Plains had to take in order to cast shaman arts. The strongest army of the other great emperor of the Central Plains had suffered grievous casualties and sicknesses, and they had even begun to fight with the warlocks of the Central Plains. Although the shaman priests had suffered grievous losses, with only a few remaining, they had still succeeded in destroying the most powerful cavalry army in history sent by the great emperor of the Central Plains, saving the Turkic people from extinction. For this reason, all the Turkic Khagans had treated the shaman priests with great respect, and the most respected of all the shaman priests was the branch left behind by that shaman leader. The Blackwater shaman was a branch left behind by that mighty shaman leader. Although 500,000 warhorses are precious, the value of the fourth prince cannot be compared to 500,000 warhorses. He is connected to the fate and future of our Western Turkic Khaganate. Khagan, you've read the oracle, so you should understand this. The Blackwater shaman leaned on his bone staff and slowly walked over. But the Western Turkic Khaganate does not have 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses. This is an impossible mission. The word oracle immediately made Ishbara Khagan much more clear-headed, but he quickly became enraged. The Turks were a people who lived on horseback, and they didn't have much of anything else but warhorses. But that also depended on what kind of horse it was. There were as many ordinary warhorses as one could want, and there were also millions of good horses. But the Western Turkic Khaganate probably did not have that many of the best and rarest warhorses. And even if they did, they would never give them to a Han. Wouldn't that be giving aid to the enemy? After all, the Western Turkic Khaganate was still at war with the Tang dynasty. He could never agree to such a condition. 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses is naturally impossible, but the city of steel cannot be left unnegotiated, and the fourth prince cannot be saved. 500,000 warhorses was just a small trick used by the other party to raise the final price of the transaction. If they really didn't want to negotiate, the fourth prince would already be dead. There would have been no need to refuse Khagan again and again. For the future of the Western Turkic Khaganate, Khagan must remain calm. The Blackwater shaman's lips moved as he slowly spoke. His face was shrouded in a black mist that acted like a veil, making it impossible to see his true appearance. Ishbara Khagan's face froze, and he was momentarily speechless. There was a reason why Ishbara Khagan favored the fourth prince. The steppe was facing an enormous crisis, one that was far more terrifying than any other in history. The first to feel this terror were the shaman priests of the steppe. They could hear the voices of the gods, and knew the mysteries of the past and the future. Events of the past had proven the power of the shaman priests countless times. The steppe would one day be destroyed, and that day would not be too far off. This was a prophecy that Ishbara Khagan had heard since he was a child. Very few people on the steppe knew of this secret, and only Ishbara Khagan, as a member of the imperial family, knew of it. From that moment on, he had been deeply uneasy, all the way until the birth of the fourth prince. This child is the hope of the entire Turkic steppe. His existence concerns the future of everyone. When the time comes, he will awaken to his mission and lead the Turks out of that dreadful calamity. The prophecy of the shaman priests regarding this child had been deeply branded into Ishbara Khagan's mind. This was also why he doted on the fourth prince so much. Just as the shaman priests had said, his value was immeasurable. Are we really going to be threatened by a teenage child who still smells of his mother's milk? Ishbara Khagan unwillingly said. As an illustrious sovereign of the steppe, Ishbara Khagan's reputation resounded through the kingdoms of the steppe. Even the protector generals and great generals of the Central Plains had to be wary of him. But now, a teenage boy from the city of Steel was asking for a sky-high price and wantonly threatening him. As the Western Turkic Khagan, how could Ishbara Khagan tolerate this? Chapter 846. Khan, just bear with it for a little longer. Let's see if they'll agree to it or not. If they insist on 500,000 war horses, then it won't be too late for us to discuss it again. The Blackwater shaman said. For the sake of the high priest, I will endure it for now, but this will definitely be the last time. Ishbara Khagan was furious, but he had no choice but to endure. Let's wait until we send out the emissaries. If they really refuse to let go, it won't be too late for the Khan to take other actions then. The Blackwater shaman nodded. Ishbara Khagan snorted angrily, but said nothing more. Also, I have another matter that I hope the Khan can help me achieve. The Blackwater shaman continued. Oh, what is it? Ishbara Khagan was somewhat surprised. He originally thought that the Blackwater shaman had appeared here because of the matter regarding the fourth prince, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. In the city of Steel of Wuxiang, the youth who captured the fourth prince, I want to meet him. When the Khagan sends out the emissary, I hope that one of my attendants can accompany him. The Blackwater shaman's voice was faintly discernible and seemed to carry a deeper meaning. Ishbara Khagan's body shook, and he seemed to suddenly understand something. Looking at the Blackwater shaman in front of him, he could not help but reveal an expression of shock. Ouch, ouch, ouch. It hurts. In the city of Steel's underground prison, Hulayeg's cries could be heard over the entire prison. He lay on the ground naked. The flesh on his plump back was lacerated, and there were even some places where his bones could be faintly seen. It was a ghastly sight. Hulayeg, I wronged you this time. I didn't expect them to beat you up like this. Don't worry, if I can go back one day, I will definitely return your property to you. The Turkic fourth prince sat next to Hulayeg, his eyes brimming with regret as he gazed at the numerous scars on Hulayeg's body. Your Highness, there's no need to blame yourself. It's my honor to serve your Highness. I don't believe that those bastards from Steel City would go back on their word and really kill me. Your Highness, be at ease. Even if I have to put my life on the line, I will definitely save you. Hulayeg clenched his teeth, but he only managed to say a few words before the wound on his back stirred, and he couldn't help but gasp in pain. At the sight of this, the fourth prince felt even more guilty. Wang Chong, you bastards! You treacherous bastards! I won't let you off. Fourth prince, if you dare to touch a hair on his head, I, Hulayeg, will not let you off even if I become a ghost. Hulayeg yelled at the top of his lungs as he cursed outside the cell. Hulayeg, don't be like this. They really will kill you. The fourth prince was touched, but he could not bear it. Look at your injuries. You really can't take any more torture. If they come looking for you later, just bear with it. Bow your head and admit you were wrong. If you can leave this place, then go find my father and ask him to save me. Wouldn't that be better than both of us dying here? The fourth prince had no idea that at this moment, a group of people outside the cell were inwardly laughing at him. But the Khagan won't believe me, Hulayeg laboriously said. It's fine. Take this of mine, and he'll believe you. The fourth prince hesitated for a moment, clenched his teeth, and finally pulled off a black token carved from bone around 3 to 4 inches from his waist. This is my prince's token. As long as you take this token to see my father, he will definitely believe you. This, your highness, be at ease. If I have a chance to leave this place, I will definitely save you. I Huleag am a man of my word. Even if I die, I will ensure your highness's safety. Huleag seemed to struggle with himself for some time before he clenched his teeth and took the bone token from the Turkic fourth prince's hand. Clang clang clang. At this moment, the clanging of metal against metal came from outside the cell. Huleag, you fat Turkic pig who doesn't know what's good for you. Marquis was kind enough to let you go, but you just had to get involved with the fourth prince. I'll give you one more chance. If you continue to speak rudely in front of Marquis, you can die here with the fourth prince. An icy voice came from outside the cell. The door opened, and several fully armored soldiers of the City of Steel strode in. After glancing at Huleag, they immediately picked up the pig-like Huleag and left, leaving the cell with the door slamming shut behind them. Huleag, don't worry about me. Hurry up and admit your wrongs. Protecting yourself is more important. Don't oppose them anymore. In the distance, one could still hear the Turkic fourth prince's worried voice as he leaned against the cell door. Ha ha ha. Huleag, you're really something. I think that the fourth prince's tears are about to fall. Don't worry about me. Hurry up and admit your wrongs. Ha ha ha. Did any of you see how the fourth prince looked when he said those words? Huleag, you bastard. If the fourth prince knew the truth, he'd skin you alive and eat you alive. Once they were out of the fourth prince's prison, they finally couldn't help but roar with laughter. Huleag had long ago become very familiar with all the guards in this prison, so they had no qualms about joking around. Haha, what's there to be afraid of? A petty man is not a gentleman, and a great man is not venomous. Isn't that what you Han of the Central Plains say? As long as I can take back my property, what does this minor matter matter? And once the fourth prince returns, I'll rise to glory and invite everyone to drink. What does today's matter then? Huleag took a silk robe from a guard and put it on, an unconcerned look on his face. Huleag, you truly are a shameless scoundrel. The guards jeered. Thank you for your praise. Huleag chuckled. That's right, where's Marquis? Still in the Trian Hall. Are you going to see Marquis? A guard chuckled and patted Huleag on the shoulder. There's no need. Just help me pass this letter to Marquis. Huleag gave a mysterious smile as he took out a letter from his bosom and handed it over. Under the flabbergasted gazes of the guards, Huleag walked out of the prison alone. He did not return to his residence as usual, nor did he go to Wang Chang's residence. Instead, he made a detour and found a plum blossom tree that had been transplanted here. Mounting a high-quality Turkic warhorse, he quickly passed through the city gate and galloped away. Marquis, Huleag just rode a horse and suddenly left the City of Steel. Not long after he left, a scout rushed into Wang Chang's residence. The City of Steel was still not completely open to the public, and anyone entering or leaving was strictly inspected. Oh, Wang Chang was seated in front of a red sandalwood table. When he heard these words, he raised an eyebrow in surprise. Reporting. Before leaving, Huleag left behind a letter that he had Lord Marquis deliver. A few moments later, another guard of the City of Steel strode in. Wang Chong was at first taken aback, but he quickly understood. Bring it here. Wang Chong waved his hand and opened Huleag's letter. With just a glance, Wang Chong immediately smiled, a look of anticipation on his face. I understand. You can leave. There's no need for you to concern yourselves with this matter in the future. Yes, Marquis. The two of them quickly responded and left the room. Huleag, I'll be depending on your performance now. Wang Chong glanced out the window, a smirk on his lips. But in the blink of an eye, the smile faded, and Wang Chong quickly took the next report. This time, however, it did not concern Talas but Chishi. Gallop! A warhorse galloped across the vast Turkic steppe, stirring up a cloud of dust. A slightly plump figure rode out from Wuxiang and toward the northwest. After an unknown period of time, a huge mountain range finally appeared in front of Zhangxian. It was as if black clouds were looming over a city, towering into the clouds. I finally arrived. The sight of Mount Sanmi, and the hundreds of elite Turkic cavalry and wolf packs on the mountain, caused a delighted smile to appear on Hilayeg's face. Whether he could rise again and reforge his glory would depend on his performance. Ha ha ha, the Khagan's tent, I'm coming. Hilayeg's eyes shone as he urged his horse to gallop toward the summit. Who goes there? Stop. Don't attack. It's one of us. I have news of the Khagan's fourth prince. I have a way to save the fourth prince. Let me in. Hilayeg yelled as he passed through Mount Sanmi and into the tent of the Western Turkic Khagan Ishbara. Ha! Ha! Time slowly passed, and everything proceeded according to Wang Chang's plans. Within the city of steel, the sounds of soldiers drilling and the clopping of hooves could be heard. On the training ground of the first light of dawn, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry were changing formation after formation, sometimes gathering and sometimes dispersing. They were extremely practiced, and their killing intent soared into the heavens, inspiring awe and fear in those who saw them. Not bad, it's about ready. Wang Chong nodded in satisfaction as he looked through the window. At the start, when the Wuxian cavalry had entered the city of steel, everyone had curiously gathered around the training ground to watch. But now that there was no one around the training ground, no one dared to approach. The Wuxian cavalry were getting stronger and stronger, and they were getting more and more like that invincible force that reigned supreme in the world. Bring me my battle armor. In addition, have the soldiers prepare to move out. Wang Chong suddenly said, Yes, Marquis. A guard quickly responded and left. Chapter 847. Gallop! Gallop! The moment Wang Chong led his army out of the city of steel, a panicked horseman in the distance hurriedly turned around and began to gallop back toward the Qixi Protectorate. It's not good. Hurry and tell the general that Wuxiang's Wang Chong is leading his army toward the Qixi Protectorate. The horseman shouted as he galloped. Cree! With the cry of the Hu horseman, the eagle soared into the air and flew toward the northwest. After passing through many spaces, it finally folded its wings and landed in the main hall of the Qixi Protectorate. What? That Wang Chong has come. The news brought back by the eagle was like a boulder crashing into the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, causing a massive uproar. Bastard! He harmed Protector General, and still dares to come? Does he really think that we're afraid of him? Gather all our brothers, and have them all come to the Protectorate. I'd like to see just what he dares to do to us. Qixi Protector General. So what if the Imperial Court has appointed him? Without the approval of us brothers, he's nothing. The heavens are high and the Emperor is far away. Not even the Imperial Court dares to do anything to us. I'd like to see just what tricks he has up his sleeve. Tell him to scram back to wherever he came from. The hall was seething with rage. The news of Wang Chong's arrival was like poking a hornet's nest, causing all the Hu generals to explode into a frenzy. In the blink of an eye, countless figures had charged out of the hall. A moment later, the entire Hu army of Qixi had been mobilized, tens of thousands of Hu soldiers surging toward the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. Cree! As the eagles soared into the sky, Qixi was in an unprecedented state of turmoil, the air fraught with tension. Marquis, look over there. It's the Qixi Protectorate's the eagle. On the road to Qixi, Zhang Ke raised his head and saw several black dots in the distant sky. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention. Marquis, do we need to get rid of them? No need. Wang Chong raised his head to take a look, smiled and waved his hand. Let them be. It's good to let them watch. Give them some time to prepare, and deal with it in one go. Wang Chong's voice was flat, but it was filled with great confidence. The matter of Qixi had been delayed for so long, and it was about time to resolve it. Pass down my order, speed up the march. Yes, that rumble. Dust billowed into the air as the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry sped up. Their movements were orderly, as if they were one person. On the other side, all the Hu cavalry had gathered in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, forming a sea of soldiers in front of the Protectorate's main hall. Everyone was silent, and the atmosphere was suffocating. How much further? 5 more miles. All right, get everything ready, we'll give him a few big gifts first. If he doesn't know what's good for him, and still dares to come over, then it's not up to us anymore. Yes, General. One by one, the scouts leaped into the air and dashed away. Reporting, Marquis, a large number of barricades have been discovered on the road up ahead. A few moments later, a Wuxiang scout rushed over and kneeled on the ground. Oh, Wang Chong's brows rose as he looked into the distance. Several hundred meters away, he saw thousands of triangular barricades, each 3 to 4 feet tall, covering the road leading to the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. With Wang Chong's eyesight, he could even see at a glance that on the left and right sides of the road in front of the barricades, there was a large tree stump. On it were several large and crooked Chinese characters. Turn back now. Those who advance will die. These were only 8 words, but they exuded an intense killing intent. These words are so ugly. Wang Chong grinned and quickly turned his head. Arrange for a squad to clean up the barricades. Yes, Marquis. One of the generals quickly responded and left. The position of Qixi Protector General had never been as lucrative as one might imagine. On the contrary, it was fraught with challenges. Just those unruly Hu soldiers were a headache to deal with. Before Wang Chong had even taken up the post, when they were still 10 li from the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, these people were already setting up barricades and dismounting. Their attitude was self-evident. A normal person, or even someone else, would have been helpless against this situation, allowing them to have their way and forcing them to retreat. Alas, they had run into him. Wang Chong had never been someone easy to deal with or dismiss. He had also not intended to use ordinary methods to deal with these resentful Qixi Protectorate soldiers. Hung long, an army quickly split up. War horses galloped, and in just a moment, a cloud of dust was kicked up on the official road. In less than a few breaths of time, all the barricades had been swept away, and a path was made. When cavalry fought, encountering barricades and pitfalls was a common occurrence. In the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had used countless caltrops to cut off the Mengshi army's path up the mountain. As an outstanding cavalry force and an outstanding commander, Wang Chong had to consider this sort of situation. This sort of situation was completely possible, and if the Wuxiang cavalry couldn't even deal with this sort of situation, they would be unworthy of their title as the world's #1 cavalry force. Thus, at the very beginning of the construction, Wang Chong's Wuxiang cavalry had always had this sort of specialized clearing force. After clearing out the barricades, the army continued upward, encountering pitfalls, caltrops, tripping ropes, all sorts of traps, all of which were swiftly cleared away by Wang Chong. To the current Wuxiang cavalry, these things posed no threat. A few moments later, Wang Chong was only 5 li from the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. This time, there were no more traps. On the broad road, a lone Hu soldier with hawk-like eyes and a deep nose stood in front of the 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry, apparently having been waiting for a long time. Wang Chong, General has ordered us to immediately retreat. Don't make a mistake. Upon seeing Wang Chong, the Hu soldier's expression turned cold. He turned his head and harshly bellowed, "It's not too late to turn back. If you cross this line, don't expect us to be impolite." Swish. As the Hu soldier spoke, he raised his halberd horizontally and suddenly bent down. Under the gazes of the crowd, the sharp tip of the halberd drew a long straight line on the ground, splitting the official road in two, creating a clear boundary line. "How dare you? Impudent! Is Marquis's name something you can call?" The soldiers behind Wang Chong were infuriated by this sight. Wang Chong was the son of Heaven's disciple, the young Marquis of the Tang dynasty, and the newly appointed Qixi Protector General. Not even Li Sai and the others would dare to call him by his name. This who was just a lowly soldier, but he actually dared to call Wang Chong by his name. This was truly unbridled and arrogant to the extreme. But before anyone could do anything, there was a flash of bloody light from Nei's warhorse. Boom! The Hu soldier was dumbfounded, and before he could even react, A massive broadsword had cleaved apart the Hu, his warhorse, and the earth. The sword Qi did not rest, tearing open a fissure 10 samzhang long in the ground. Disrespecting one's superior and disrespecting Marquis. How dare you? Li Sai's eyes chilled, and his icy voice boomed like a peal of thunder, traveling several li away. Even the soldiers of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters could clearly hear it, and they all grimaced. In the light of the first rays of dawn, Li Sai held his saber in front of him. His sturdy and heavy figure was as imposing as a mountain, deeply imprinting itself in everyone's eyes. Bastard! At that moment, the soldiers in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters all grimaced. Advance! Wang Chong faintly smiled and waved his sword as he gave the order to advance. If those Hu of the Qixi Protectorate wanted to use this method to deal with him, they had found the wrong person. If they thought that this could stop him, they were dreaming. The army advanced, encountering no more opponents. A few moments later, Wang Chong finally saw the majestic Qixi Protectorate headquarters, as well as the tens of thousands of Hu soldiers in front of it. These tens of thousands of well-equipped Hu soldiers were divided into ranks, forming a massive gorge between Wang Chong's Wuxiang army and the hall of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. The army was silent, but an invisible killing intent soared into the heavens. The thousands of Hu soldiers exuded powerful auras, their sharp gazes staring at Wang Chong, as if they wanted nothing more than to pulverize Wang Chong's body. In a flash, the air became tense and somber, and Wang Chong's 5,000 Wuxiang soldiers slowly came to a halt. Bastard! What are these scoundrels doing? At this sight, the soldiers behind Wang Chong paled, their eyes flashing with fury. Wang Chong was the Qixi Protector General of the Imperial Court, a title that the Holy Emperor had personally conferred. For these people to dare to gather their soldiers and resist Wang Chong was tantamount to rebelling against their superiors. How preposterous! Do they really dare to rebel? A hint of rage flashed through Su Qi's eyes as he urged his horse to charge forward. Wait a moment. At this moment, a voice came from behind him. Wang Chong had extended a palm and called out to Su Qi. Come back. Let's see what they want to do first. Wang Chong's expression was indifferent, seemingly unconcerned. He had predicted this scene long ago. He was the one who had pulled Foman Linta off his horse, and the Hu on the border had never had a good impression of him. He would have been more surprised if he had been able to smoothly assume his post in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. A feast at Hongmen, interesting. Wang Chong rode forward 2 paces, a faint smile on his lips as he gazed at the vast Hu army. He had never once thought about going back from the City of Steel. No matter how many Hu there were, they would have to yield whether they wanted to or not. Wang Chong, with a peal of thunder, a deep and resonant voice, tinged with the unique trill of the Hu, came from the rear of the army. You're quite bold. After harming our Protector General, you still have the face to appear before us. Do you really think that we don't dare to kill you? I'll give you one chance. It's not too late to retreat now. With this cold and hard voice, the vast army in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters parted like a wave. 20 to 30 Hu generals clad in thick armor strode forward, their armor clattering against each other, as they seethed with killing intent. At the very front of this group of Hu generals was a tall and muscular Hu general. His eyes were vicious and fierce, brimming with boundless ambition. The tens of thousands of Hu soldiers fused with his aura, making him seem even taller. Good July. Chapter 848. The world was quiet. Whether it was the tens of thousands of Hu soldiers, or the 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry led by Wang Chong, all of them were silent. But the atmosphere between the two armies was only getting more and more tense. Li Sai, Su Ke, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others all had angry expressions on their faces at Dou Li's words. But no one said a word. All of them were looking in the same direction, at a single person. Good July. A voice suddenly rang out in front of the two armies. Wang Chong stroked the reins of his horse, a faint smile on his face as he slowly rode out of the army. He examined the Hu generals lined up 50 some zhang away, an amused look in his eyes. Defying a military order, defying a holy decree, you should know the result. Dismiss the army, put down your weapons, kneel, and beg for mercy, and I can spare your life. Otherwise kill. No. Edict. Bastard. Impudent. Foul brat. Who do you think you are? You have no right to speak here. Before Gujulai could say anything, the other Hu generals immediately began to curse. Gujulai couldn't help but smirk at this sight. In this period of time, he had complete control over the Qixi Protectorate. Without his orders, even if Wang Chong obtained the decree of the Holy Emperor and became Qixi Protector General, it would still be useless. Enough! Gujulai extended an arm to stop them. He slightly raised his head and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Wang Chong on horseback. Brat, you're too arrogant. You're not even Qixi Protector General yet. But you're already giving orders. Let me tell you, in Qixi, only one person's words are useful. In the past, it was Lord Fomenlinta. Lord Fuchaolingchao was pulled down by you, but someone else took his place. But no matter who it is, there's one thing I can be sure of. He is a Hu, not you. Even if you have the decree of the imperial court, it's useless here. Use it. Gujulai made a gesture at the last two words. Roar. In an instant, following Gujulai's gesture, the 20,000 soldiers roared in unison, letting out an earth-shattering roar. In that instant, all the birds in the mountains flew away, all the people in the paths disappeared, and the entire earth buzzed and trembled amidst this shocking roar. Buzz! Upon seeing this, Su Qi, Su Shixian, Cheng Sanyuan, and Zhang Ke all grimaced. With just this roar, the 20,000 Hu soldiers were forged into a steel plate. This scene alone made it extremely difficult for Wang Chong to ascend to the position of Qixi Protector General. Gujulai's control over these Hu soldiers was even greater than they had imagined. Marquis, do we need to take action? Li Sai was the only one who remained calm and collected. He looked ahead without any expression. There's no hurry. Wang Chong smiled and stopped Li Sai. No matter what Gudali's intentions were, this move of his was meaningless to him. But Wang Chong was in no hurry. He turned his gaze to the other Hu generals at Gujulai's side. Gujulai plotted a rebellion and committed an unforgivable crime. What about the rest of you? Do you want to go with him? Buzz. Under Wang Chong's gaze, the Hu generals at Gujulai's side felt their hearts clench. A man's name is like a tree's shadow. Although Wang Chong was young, he was an illustrious figure in the western regions, like the sun at high noon. At the Battle of the Triangular Gap, tens of thousands of Uzun soldiers had died in battle. Even a great general like Dusong Mangpoch had been forced to flee, and Dayan Mangpoch had even died. Later on, the death of the Black Wolf Yabgo had pushed Wang Chong's reputation to the peak. In Qixi, Wang Chong's reputation was no different from that of the god of death. Although they said that they weren't afraid, they were inwardly very apprehensive. However, when they saw Guduli in front of them, their gazes slowly became resolute. Foul brat, don't try to drive a wedge between us. When did we start a rebellion? I advise you to leave as soon as possible. The position of Qixi Protector General isn't so easy to sit on. It looks to me like you're the one plotting a rebellion. If you don't leave now, don't blame us for being merciless. The Hu soldiers angrily glared at Wang Chong, not willing to back down. Ha ha, do you see? You've wasted your efforts. Guduli looked at his opponent with a smug expression. I'll count to 6. If you don't retreat by then, I'll immediately attack, and you'll have to bear the consequences. The main force of the Qixi Protectorate was the Hu. If the Qixi Protectorate suffered grievous casualties when he attacked, Wang Chong would immediately be removed from his position as Qixi Protector General. And if Wang Chong didn't fight back, the soldiers he had brought with him would suffer grievous casualties. Whether Wang Chong attacked or not, he was doomed to lose this battle. As long as one could not obtain the recognition of these Hu generals, anyone the imperial court sent would be useless. This was what Gujulai was relying on the most. 1. Gujulai raised a finger, a smug look on his face. 2. 3. Gujulai raised his fingers one by one, brimming with confidence, as if he had already defeated Wang Chong. So what if he was the young marquis? So what if he was the son of heaven's disciple? In the Qixi Protectorate, only he, Gujulai, had the final say. There's no need to go to so much trouble. Wang Chong slowly urged his horse forward, a smirk on his face. I can answer you right now. Gujulai, you're already dead. The final word dead was like a peal of thunder in everyone's ears. Gujulai's heart skipped a beat and his face paled. But what shocked him the most was Wang Chong's next reaction. From start to finish, Wang Chong had always had a faint smile on his lips, but at this moment, his expression turned cruel and callous. At the same time, he raised his right hand and swung it down. Attack! The cold voice resounded in everyone's ears, and a moment later, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, who had restrained their auras, suddenly exploded with a storm of energy. In that instant, it was earth-shattering and earth-shattering. This bastard! He really dares. Gujulai's face was ghastly pale, and this was the only thought in his mind. If the 20,000 Hu cavalry of Qixi suffered grievous casualties from internal strife, Wang Chong wouldn't even be able to last through the night, and would soon be thrown into prison. It was precisely because he had grasped this point that Gujulai had dared to so brazenly oppose the imperial court. But he had never imagined that Wang Chong would be even more brazen than he was. He hadn't even thought about it before giving the order to attack. When a person lost their greatest support, Gujulai's feelings were no different from those of other people. They were flustered and uneasy. Bastard! You'll regret this. This thought flashed through Gujulai's mind, and he immediately issued the only order he could. Attack! Rumble! War horses neighed and the 20,000 cavalry howled, their sabers, swords, and halberds aimed at the Wuxian cavalry. But the famed and disciplined Qixi cavalry of the western regions were now facing the most frightening foe they had ever encountered. Clang clang clang. A dazzling halo shot out from under the hooves of a Wuxian horseman, and then another and another, one after another, shot out from under the feet of the Wuxian cavalry with astonishing speed. Charge! The 20,000 Qixi cavalry had barely adjusted their weapons when the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry behind Wang Chong had already charged more than 30 zhang away. So fast! At this sight, Gujulai and the Hu generals of the Qixi Protectorate were in disarray. They had long ago known that the Wuxian cavalry of the City of Steel were formidable, the elite of the elite. But they had not been there at the Battle of the Triangular Gap. Nor had they imagined that there would be such terrifying cavalry in the world. From the moment they started to charge, not even a second had passed. While the 20,000 Qixi cavalry were still moving at zero speed, Wang Chong's 5,000 Wuxian cavalry had already reached their peak speed. Under the dazzling halos, these powerful Wuxian cavalry were like divine soldiers descending from the heavens. Boom! Time seemed to stop at that moment. With a heaven-shaking boom, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry stabbed into the 20,000 Qixi cavalry like a sharp knife. The Ney was thrown into disarray, the soldiers of the Qixi Protectorate, and their horses like they were made of paper, as they were thrown into the air by Wang Chong's Wuxian cavalry. Not a single one of the Qixi cavalry was a match for them. Bastard! Kill him! Kill them all! Gujulai's furious voice resounded over the army, his teeth clenched so tightly that they were about to shatter. Wang Chong and his 5,000 Wuxian cavalry were too crazy and too impudent. The laws of the imperial court and the laws of the army seemed to have no restraints on them. These bastards were even more arrogant and despotic than he was. Kill! The more you kill, the better. You madman, I'd like to see how you deal with this. At Gujulai's side, the other Hu generals were also anxious, issuing order after order as tens of thousands of Qixi cavalry charged in from all sides. But these cavalry could not stop the advance of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. Rumble! Wang Chong's Wuxian cavalry charged forward, as if they were nothing more than dried twigs. In just a few seconds, they had completely routed the central army that Gujulai had gathered. But in the midst of this fierce battle, not even Gujulai noticed that even though countless Qixi cavalry were being cut down like straw by the Wuxian cavalry, the majority of them were only heavily injured, with only a few truly dead. If one looked carefully, one would realize that there was a faint layer of light enveloping all the Wuxian cavalry. Rather than saying that the Qixi cavalry had been sent flying by the Wuxian cavalry, it was more accurate to say that they had been sent flying by this layer of light. The Iron Wall Formation. Chapter 849. Bang bang bang. Countless sabers, swords, and halberds stabbed at them from all sides. But they were either repelled by the white light on the Wuxian cavalry or dodged. Some of the Wuxian cavalry even reached out to grab their opponents from their horses and throw them to the ground. In terms of horsemanship, there were very few people who could surpass the Wuxian cavalry. Rumble! There was a heaven-shaking boom, and in less than 4 seconds, the Hu army that Gujilai had gathered in front of the Qixi Protectorate's main hall had been pierced through by Wang Chong. These Qixi cavalry had all been trained by Foman Linta through the strictest methods, and they had all experienced the fires of war. In the view of Gujilai and the other Hu generals, the 20,000 Qixi cavalry were Qixi's strongest fortress, more than enough to deal with Wang Chong. But no one had expected that in front of Wang Chong's 5,000 soldiers, it would be like paper, instantly pierced through. Wang Chong had used absolute strength to crush the tens of thousands of Qixi cavalry. Nay, war horses whinnied and men were thrown off their mounts. This massive contrast between before and after instantly threw the 20,000 Qixi soldiers into panic. Damn it! Get out of the way! Those Han brats are coming! How could there be such a thing? Ah, too terrifying! Get out of the way! Wang Chong's 5,000 Wuxian cavalry had emerged victorious, giving everyone an unprecedented shock, from the mind to the body. For the first time, the Hu army that had believed themselves to be invincible in Qixi had been struck by an earthquake. The army had been routed like a landslide. With just a single charge, Wang Chong had cleanly pierced through the center of the Hu army that Gudali had gathered, and the 20,000-strong Hu army was instantly routed. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Gujilai's eyes went red at this sight. Don't be afraid. Kill them. Swarm them. Rush up and kill them all. Gudu was exhausted and hysterical. He let out a string of sounds from his mouth, and his entire person was in chaos. In Qixi, the strongest fighting force was the Hu in the army. They had once defeated the Uzan and the Western Turks. This was a true army of steel, an army of 100 battles. Gujilai did not believe that such a mighty army would be defeated so easily. He was still struggling on his deathbed, trying to gather his army and use his advantage in numbers to completely defeat Wang Chong and his Wuxian iron cavalry. However, at this time, Gujilai heard a wave of hurried hooves through the thousands of chaotic sounds. A powerful aura, like a surging wave, passed through the army and charged in his direction. Without any warning, a strong sense of danger suddenly enveloped his body. Gujilai's heart trembled, and without the slightest hesitation, he pulled out his sword. However, Guduli's reaction was still too slow. Just as he pulled out his sword, Hong, a cold light flickered, and a huge blood-red horse soared into the sky. On the horse, a figure that was as tall as a mountain range became one with the horse, brandishing a huge sword that was as tall as a person, and fiercely slashed down. At that moment, even the sunlight in the sky was blocked. The huge sword in that person's hand shone brightly like a blazing flame, bringing with it an unparalleled aura, as it heavily slashed down towards Gudali. Boom! There was an earth-shattering boom, and in the blink of an eye, Gudali only had time to gather all the stellar energy in his body and gather it into the long sword in his hand. He raised the sword and scabbard high to block the attack, and then everything went silent. Even the sounds of fighting on the battlefield became much quieter. Time and space seemed to have come to a standstill as countless gazes gathered from all directions. Some of them were shocked, some were confused, and some were in disbelief. In the center of the battlefield, the invincible General Li Sai rode on a tall Fergana steed with a cold expression. The huge broad-backed Wuxia steel sword in his hand was pointed downward. At the tip of the sword, the most powerful rebel general in the entire Qixi Protectorate, Gujilai, was kneeling. His hands were raised high, holding the sword that he always carried with him, and his body was motionless. Clang! There was a crisp sound, and the first thing to crack was the well-tempered sword in Gujilai's hand. Then, a line of blood shot out from the center of his forehead, like an invisible string, and his body was split into two. Gujulai's eyes went round in disbelief, and then, with the line of blood at the center of his forehead as the center, his body was split in two, one on the left and one on the right. Rumble! Dust billowed. Almost at the same time that Gu Duli collapsed, a beam of sword chi shot up into the sky from the ground, plowing a 6 to 7 meter long crack in the ground behind Gu Duli. Only now did the sword chi that Li Sai had sent into the ground begin to explode. Those who dare to mutiny, so be it. Li Sai sat on his horse, his sword pointed at Gujulai's remains. His body exuded waves of icy killing intent, his callous voice echoing over the entire Chishi protectorate. Bang! At the start, when the 5,000 Chishi soldiers had pierced through the center of the Chishi army of 20,000, there had still been some who were unwilling to give up and still fiercely fighting for the morale of Gujulai's army. Thus, when Gudu Li, whom they viewed as the leader of the Hu, fell, the last bit of faith in the hearts of the Hu cavalry crumbled. Kneel and surrender or else die. Wang Chong's voice rang out over their heads, callous and emotionless. Whoosh! With Wang Chong's voice, the Chishi cavalry put down their weapons and fearfully kneeled on the ground. At first it was one or two, but soon, a vast sea of them began to kneel. Gudu Li was dead, and the cavalry of the City of Steel were so powerful that they felt like they were no match for them, as if they could rival them with human strength. What are you doing? Have you forgotten who killed the Protector General? Bastard! He's a Han! Get up, all of you get up! The Hu generals were infuriated by this sight, and they began to curse and rage. But with two thuds, the swords pierced through the bodies of the two Hu generals. Treacherous officials and traitors, truly deserving of death. Huang Batian stood over the corpse of a Hu general, a look of disdain on his face, as he slowly pulled out his sword. Huang Batian had come from Wushang village, and his thoughts were pure and not as complicated. These people had dared to defy their superiors, and Huang Batian had long ago found them displeasing to the eye. If not for Wang Chong's orders, these fellows would have been dead long ago. Bastard! Wang Chong, you're dead. I don't believe that you would dare to kill all of us. Another Hu general angrily roared, but before he could finish, a spear had run through his throat and nailed him to the ground. Up until the moment of his death, his eyes were still wide open. He didn't even think before he actually killed them. This bastard! Isn't he afraid of the imperial court investigating? This was the last thought in his mind. With these people dead, the Hu generals instantly crumbled, fleeing like birds and beasts. They no longer had the resolve to fight against Wang Chong. It was only at this moment that they realized that they had greatly underestimated this Han youth. His methods were thunderous, ruthless, decisive, and iron-blooded. Everyone's confidence, and the methods they had prepared beforehand, were completely useless against him. One more step forward and you'll die. Wang Chong patted his horse and slowly urged it forward, a faint smile on his lips. His voice was neither loud nor soft, and there was no hint of anger in it. But in the ears of the Hu generals, it was like a clap of thunder. The fleeing Hu generals trembled, all the blood draining from their faces, leaving them ghastly pale. Even though it was empty in front of them, and there was no one blocking them, everyone felt as though their feet were nailed to the ground. They couldn't move even half a step. A huge fear swept over them like a tidal wave, completely crushing the last bit of courage in their hearts and scattering it in all directions. Those who dared to rebel against the imperial court were basically the most vicious and ferocious of the Hu. These people had no fear, but Wang Chong's methods had left them deeply fearful. Although this young marquis of the City of Steel had the face of a 17-year-old, in their minds, he was a terrifying demon. Wang Chong's iron-blooded methods had thoroughly shattered their resolve. Gallop! The slow clopping of hooves seemed to trample on the hearts of the Hu horsemen. Hearing this sound, all the Hu cavalry lowered their heads, their hearts filled with fear. They didn't even dare to look at the sound. If they hadn't known what sort of person Wang Chong was before, they now knew that Wang Chong had established himself as a lofty and invincible figure. Kneel! Wang Chong rode his warhorse through the battlefield like he was taking a leisurely stroll. His gaze swept over the battlefield as he spoke these two words. At the edge of the battlefield, The Hu generals who had already fled some distance felt their hearts tremble. With their backs to Wang Chong, they immediately kneeled, not daring to move. As the Hu generals knelt, the rebellion of the Hu generals came to an end. Li Sai, I'll leave the rest to you. Wang Chong paused as he passed by Li Sai. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai nodded. His aura surged, domineering and tyrannical, deeply shocking these Hu generals. Li Sai had come from the ranks, and before he had joined Wang Chong, he had already had abundant experience in biting. Although he was not an expert in administrative matters, he would definitely have no problem in reorganizing the army. Wang Chong nodded and continued forward. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.